Chapter 452. The women of Purple Cloud Palace read the document left behind by the former master of a mortal mansion and looked at each other in silence. Except for Sanfeng, who was a little unhappy, First Phoenix and Second Phoenix knew that they were meat on someone else's chopping block and understood that they had to bow their heads when they were under someone else's roof. With a flick of his sleeve, Qin Ong released the restriction that imprisoned everyone and shouted at Sanfeng, "Hand over the restriction tablet that imprisoned Lu Rongbua's primordial spirit." Sanfeng looked left and right, but no one in the Golden Court paid any attention to her. She could only obediently hand over the palace tablet that imprisoned a wisp of Lu Rongbua's primordial spirit. Qin Ong took the palace tablet and waved his hand. A speck of golden light escaped from the palace tablet and burrowed into Lu Rongbua's head. Lu Rongbua felt her primordial spirit lighten, as if a heavy shackle had been removed. There was an indescribable sense of lightness, and she couldn't help but shed tears of joy. When Qin Ong saw that Sanfeng was looking at Lu Rongbua with great hatred in her eyes, he couldn't help but sneer. He looked at the two elders of Mount Song next to him, and sure enough, they looked at Sanfeng with disgust and indifference. The people of the righteous path in this world were not the kind and pedantic people of other worlds. Or rather, any qualified cultivator would have a resolute determination that had been tempered and tempered thousands of times in their hearts. Righteous path masters who weren't decisive enough and didn't kill ruthlessly enough, even if they couldn't learn it in this life, they should have tempered it in their next. If they still couldn't train that kind of decisiveness after being killed and reincarnated, they deserved to sink into oblivion and never be freed from the great Tao. Therefore, regardless of whether it was the righteous path or the unorthodox path, they were absolutely decisive when it came to killing. Even the thieving baldies of the Buddhist path were swift and decisive when it came to killing the unorthodox path. There were even people like Venerable Ju who were ruthless and who struck terror in the hearts of the unorthodox path. In this regard, Amei was even more decisive. Before they made up their minds, they might show mercy, but when they directly acted, they were ruthless and merciless, which suited Qin Eng's taste. The second and third generation of Amei sects juniors displayed this style to the extreme. As for the two elders of Mount Song, although they were not disciples of Amei sect, they were not far from each other. Moreover, Lu Rongbua was the grand disciple of Immortal Jilu, a direct disciple of Qingqing sect, while Zhu Mei was the future sect leader of Qingqing sect. Although their lineages were different, they were still related to each other, so they could be considered as Zhu Mei's juniors. Although Sanfeng is fated to be reincarnated in Qingqing in the future, she is an evil creature in this life. How can Zhu Mei watch her make things difficult for Lu Rongbua? Qin Ong saw all of this. He opened his hand and shot out a beam of golden light with the palace token. The three phoenixes could not fight back at all. He severed a wisp of their primordial spirits and sucked them into the palace token. The first and second phoenixes were furious, but how could they dare to stop him? Qin Ong handed the palace tablet to Lu Rongbua and said, "Your fate in the mortal world is not over yet, and you still need to cultivate diligently for another 30 years before you can ascend to the immortal world. But because of my interference, Immortal Ji Li's tribulation of tempering you was interrupted. So, I will set another tribulation for you. Sanfeng has captured you as a slave, and it is a heinous crime. I will imprison a wisp of her primordial spirit on the palace token and cast a restriction. With the palace token in your hand, you can punish her with just a thought. This restriction is called the 10 Directions Hell's Reincarnation Prohibition. It is a Buddhist restriction. With the palace token in your hand, you can cast her into the cycle of reincarnation, or suck her primordial spirit into the illusion of hell, or inflict all kinds of torture on her. Once the 30 years are up, the palace token will immediately release her primordial spirit. This is the tribulation I have set for you. If you can make her turn over a new leaf, you will be able to accumulate a lot of external cultivation. And once the 30 years are up, you will immediately ascend to the immortal world. If you punish her out of selfishness and torture her, you will have your own karma in the future. If within the 30 years, you will also have a part of the consequences of the sins she has committed. The degree of control will be your tribulation. Take care of yourself. He then said to Sanfeng, you captured her as a slave for 20 years, so I will let you be a slave under her for 30 years as compensation. Are you convinced? Seeing the hatred in Sanfeng's eyes, he only smiled. Other than Sanfeng, Erfeng and Chufeng did not take the initiative to make things difficult for him, so Chenong did not punish them. Long Lizi, Huizhu, and the rest did not fight with him either. Other than the mastermind Sanfeng, whose primordial spirit was sealed by Chenong and made into a slave, those who wanted to harm him in Purple Cloud Palace were all killed by him, so Chenong simply let them go. Purple Cloud Palace was no longer fated with them, and it was Amei's property. As for whether Amei temporarily borrowed them or chased them out, it had nothing to do with Chenong. Purple Cloud Palace's restriction was broken by Chenong. Although it was temporarily protected by the Yellow River of 9 Rivers Formation, it was still Chunang's formation. In the future, it still needed to protect his immortal abode, so naturally he could not rely on it. In the future, if Amei's immortal abode still needed Chunang's formation to protect it, it would not be good. Zhu Mei asked Chenong to stay and help them refine the restriction. Yang Li, Lu Rongbua, and the rest could only stay and help them. Purple Cloud Palace was one of the 9 immortal abodes. The palace was hundreds of miles deep and was divided into 63 levels. There were pearl palaces, golden halls, jade steps, jade forests, and strange plants everywhere. However, because it was located in the eye of the sea, although the 2 elders of Mount Song were good at the restriction, it was not as powerful as the Golden Mother's restriction. They saw that Chenong broke the restriction and captured people as easily as taking something out of his pocket, and the passage of the divine sand was destroyed. If they were the ones in charge of the establishment, the Purple Cloud Palace would probably be emptied by the demons from overseas before Amei opened its abode. So the 2 elders of Mount Song asked Chenong to refine the Purple Cloud Palace into one, forming a formation to suppress the eye of the sea and prevent the demons from spying on them. Then they lent the Purple Cloud Palace to Chufeng and the rest for 30 years to preside over the formation, waiting for Amei to come and get it. Yang Li also promoted the core restriction of the formation. On one hand, it was to prevent Chufeng and the rest from harming the Purple Cloud Palace. On the other hand, it was to temporarily use them to cultivate and avoid disaster. 30 years later, Lu Rongbua would have the hope of ascending. Chenong activated the 9 Bends Yellow River Formation, but it was magnificent. It could easily transform into a paradise in the eye of the sea. The 2 elders of Mount Song thought that it was a different world than Amei's Yin and Yang dust formation. It was more suitable for the environment in the sea, and it was a match made in heaven with the eye of the sea of the Purple Cloud Palace. They thought to themselves, Qin Daoyou's formation makes the Purple Cloud Palace even more magical. In the future, when disciples avoid disaster and cultivate, it will be better than the original restriction. After pondering for a while, he asked Chenong, fellow Taoist's formation technique is vigorous. Combined with the Purple Cloud CI, it can best protect and conceal the palace. There's another one that regulates Yin and Yang and benefits the Eastern Sea. Every day, the eye of the sea takes in and spits out seawater 10 times more, extracting the dark and murky air from the bottom of the sea and rising to the surface of the sea. It nourishes countless elixirs and seaweed, allowing fish and beasts to multiply. It's a great service to heaven and earth. The Purple Cloud Palace has the ability to suppress the Xian-Yin poison fire in the Earth's crust, but it can't compare to fellow Taoist's method of drawing water to merge fire, reconciling the Yin and Yang of water and fire, purifying the poison fire, and nurturing the living beings in the sea. If fellow Taoist is able to set up a formation and complete the eye of the sea's ability to swallow and spit out, the people living in the palace will be blessed by the heaven and earth. there will be little calamity, and fellow Taoist will also be able to obtain 10,000 external merits. Furthermore, as the sea benefits the East Ocean and living beings grow, this external technique will definitely be endless. I wonder if fellow Taoist can unite the entire palace and lay down this formation? Chapter 453. Chenong was slightly surprised. He didn't expect that the two elders of Mount Song would make such a request. As for the incantation of the tactical matrix, he naturally didn't care about it. Although the formation to suppress the immortal mansion was mysterious, it was just a variation of the formation of the Yellow River of 9 Bends. For example, the Yin and Yang dust formation of the Mei sect was suppressed by the Tai Ching immortal talisman, and it evolved into the destruction of life and death. Later, it suppressed the Purple Cloud Palace, and it couldn't even protect the sea surface. Even if someone spent thousands of years to slowly figure out one of the variations of the Yellow River of 9 Bends formation, it would only be 1/50th of the Yellow River of 9 Bends formation, not to mention if there were any geniuses who could figure out the entire trick from the formation that was fixed in the eye of the sea. If anyone thought that they would be able to grasp the weakness of Chunang's formation and come to him for a lesson, Chenong would let them know the terrifying power of the complete Yellow River of 9 Bends formation. Beyond the 9 Bends Heavenly River, 10,000 miles of sand, turning the Yellow River into the Heavenly River, and the planets into the eternal sands, evolving into the galaxy of the universe. Of course, the formation was still evolving. However, Chenong calculated that if he really gathered all 7 types of innate true water and went to the starry sky to search for the stars outside of Mount Shu, he would refine them into the formation and use them as godly sand. Then he would truly have a portion of the power of turning the Milky Way into the Milky Way. Chenong thought to himself, Mount Amei has the Yin and Yang dust formation, so they may not be interested in the suppressive power of the 9 Bends Yellow River formation. I'm afraid they've taken a fancy to the wonders of refining the eye of the sea and my formation and nourishing living creatures. If the Purple Cloud Palace really has the Yellow River formation of 9 Bends to suppress it, I don't know how much the fish and beasts in the East Sea will benefit. It's just like the upwelling of seawater in the Peruvian fishery on Earth. The deep-sea nutrients brought by the upwelling of seawater will make a big fishery long ago. The 9 Bends Yellow River formation boosts the absorption ability of the eye of the sea and purifies the seawater. It also brings the seawater in the crust at the bottom of the sea, which has become dark and cold due to the nature of the dark Yin poison fire, to the surface of the sea. The true fire of the sun neutralizes it, reconciles Yin and Yang, and turns it into spirit chi to nourish the East Sea. The mineral nutrients and turbid gas at the bottom of the sea are also exchanged with the surface. Just this alone is enough to support countless algae and plankton. To be able to have this kind of good fortune that is compatible with the heavenly Tao, cultivating in the Purple Cloud Palace in seclusion will have countless benefits. If one had to avoid a tribulation, one could obtain the blessing of fortune in the Purple Cloud Palace. Then a major tribulation could be turned into a minor tribulation, and a minor tribulation could be turned into no tribulation. No wonder the 2 elders of Mount Song didn't even ask for Taoist Miao Wen's permission before deciding to give up 90% of the Purple Cloud Palace. I'm afraid that in return they're willing to give me half of the spirit herbs and treasures in the Purple Cloud Palace. Chenong pondered for a moment. After thinking it through, he raised his head and said with a smile, "Nothing is impossible in this world." However, Purple Cloud Palace is Amei's outer palace. Is it inappropriate for an outsider like me to set up the palace protecting array? When Zhu Mei heard the first part of Chunang's sentence, she was already delighted, but the second part was just nonsense. He must have thought it through before mentioning it. She only said, "Fellow Taoist, don't worry. With fellow Taoists' magic power, even if it's other restrictions, how long can they trouble fellow Taoist? Didn't Violet Cloud Palace have the Golden Mother restrictive technique in the past? Didn't you break it in 3 days? Fellow Taoist, I naturally trust your magic power." After saying that, he glanced at the other people of the Purple Cloud Palace and said with a smile, "You guys are blessed. In these 30 years, if you cultivate diligently with the protection of this blessing, you might be able to refine the root of evil and eliminate the many hidden dangers of magic. Lu Rongbua, you must not act rashly. You must stay clear of the mortal world and ascend to the heavens in the palace. There will definitely be protection." Therefore, Yan Li and the others collected golden jade, cold iron, coral pearl mother, and sent them into the Nine Bends Yellow River Formation. With the help of the Xian Yin real fire and a lot of true water, they refined the divine sand. As for Chanong, he breathed in and spat out seawater and separated a long river. With the help of the 2 elders of Mount Song, he worked for 49 days and separated a branch from the Yellow River Formation to preside over the Purple Cloud Palace's restrictive spell and the Eye of the Sea Formation. Although it wasn't as powerful as the previous Chinang's formation, it was still much better than the original restrictive spell. It also had the ability to help the ocean absorb and nourish the East Sea, bringing countless blessings. Usually, Chinong and the 2 elders of Mount Song talked about magic and formed a good friendship. When the 54th floor of the Purple Cloud Palace merged with the formation and suppressed the eye of the formation, the surface of the sea became calm and the waves disappeared. Only a rainbow light escaped from the bottom of the sea and crossed the surface of the eye of the sea. About 10 feet below the surface of the sea, endless seawater rose from the Xian in part of the Earth's crust and surged in all directions. The entire eye of the sea and the Nine Bends Yellow River Formation merged together and became a fixed formation. It could no longer change. Every day, when the seawater breathed in and spat out, it silently accumulated in the formation. If anyone dared to violate it, they would be crushed by this force. After thousands of years of accumulation, even a divine immortal would not be able to escape. After the Xian Yin Qi in the Eye of the Sea was mixed with the true fire of the sun, it was sent to the Purple Cloud Palace to nourish the elixirs in the palace and turn them into resources for the blessed land. When cultivating there, one's heart would be calm and clear, and it would be difficult for one to go berserk. The vitality was lively, and people couldn't help but sigh in admiration. What a good, immortal, blessed land! The Jade Palace and Pearl Palace. Finally, Chin-Ong used the Nine Bends Yellow River Formation to put away the Pearl Palace, which was filled with elixirs. Chin-Ong scanned it with his primordial spirit. Many of the types of elixirs that the Purple Cloud Palace had were all here. Some rare elixirs were unique and only he had them. Knowing that the 2 elders of Mount Song had good intentions, he accepted them. Chin-Ong thought to himself that the 2 elders really understood him. They knew that he didn't care about Dharma treasures. Instead, there were many natural treasures, such as weapons, musical instruments, clothes, and many other tools commonly used by cultivators. There was also a lot of 1,000-year dipper, red heart, broken flower, spirit, consolidating glue, and so on. After the 2 elders of Mount Song completed the formation, they deeply admired the Nine Bends Palace. They couldn't repay Chinong with many elixirs for refining the Eye of the Sea. Because he wasn't a true lord of the immortal mansion, they couldn't give him more, so they could only compensate him in other aspects. They let Chin-Ang's Nine Bends Palace gather 50% of the essence of the Purple Cloud Palace. Chin-Ang's vision was even higher. He knew the origins and uses of many things in the Nine Bends Palace that the 2 elders of Mount Song didn't know. Moreover, in the past few months, he had refined the 9 gourds of heavenly true water in the Eye of the Sea. He had achieved small success in the 7 kinds of connate true water in the heavenly river Dharma power. If he wanted to achieve great success, he would need an endless amount of true water, and he needed to cultivate hard. In addition, he had re-refined the Samadhi true fire, which had absorbed the underground ether fire, the true fire of the sun, and the small success of the human spirit fire, which was the original eternal lamp flame. In addition, he controlled the Nine Bends Yellow River Formation and collected the 10,000-year cold iron, pure gold, 1,000-year pure iron, Tai pure gold, and many other metals from the Purple Cloud Palace's crust and the surrounding 3,000 miles, and sent them to the underground ether fire to be refined. This made Chinong suddenly rich. Third Princess Lingsha and Prince Jiao Li saw with their own eyes that after Chun Ang's trip to the Purple Cloud Palace, he turned from a lone Taoist cultivator to richer than the entire Sea Nation. One of them admired the freedom of a Taoist cultivator, and his Taoist heart advanced a step further. The other chanted in his heart, "Kill and set fire to the heavens, plunder and destroy the families, and get rich." Chinong put away the heavenly river Dharma power, and the Nine Bends yellow river formation that carried the Nine Bends palace shrank into a heavenly river and entered Chunang's sleeve to accompany Macho. Chapter 454. Chinong had seen the 5 metals that filled several storerooms. He used the formation chart to control the eye of the sea to excavate the mineral veins in the earth's crust, and then used the Xianin poisonous fire to refine them into 5 metals. The power of the eye of the sea was so great that it was even more abundant than that of a celestial being. Chinong used the formation chart to control it, and it was like there were hundreds of individual immortals helping him to mine and refine metals day and night. Among the 5 metals that he obtained, there were not many innate true gold like the Western Tai true gold, but the essence of the 5 metals was most likely everywhere. The 1,000-year-old refined iron at the bottom of the sea was even more than the smelting output of the entire great Ming dynasty in a year. This was because he used the underground Xianin poisonous fire, also known as the Xianin poisonous fire, to refine it. This fire was originally a mass of Xianin qi before the Yuanshi period, and it revolved rapidly all year round. Therefore, this fire belonged to the nature of Xianin, and the 5 metals that were refined also had this fire's characteristics. If he refined various kinds of instruments belonging to the Yin, the evil path, or the demonic sect, it would naturally complement each other and enhance the nature of the magical weapon. If he refined a pure yang magical weapon, there was the suspicion of damaging the nature of the magical weapon, and he would get half the result with twice the effort. Since Chinong practiced the 9 Bends Yellow River Formation, he realized the wonderful combination of theory and practice and the wonderful effect of advancing by leaps and bounds. Only then did he understand why so many experts in Mount Shu wanted to refine a magical weapon to restrain the demons that they could easily eradicate. There was not only the mystery of cause and effect, but also the key to cultivation. Magical weapons and spiritual objects had their own supernatural powers, just like a cultivator. Refining a magical weapon was equivalent to creating another kind of cultivator, and it was a different kind of cultivation process. The unaffiliated disciples of the mystic door had to refine flying swords from nothing. Even if their masters and seniors had pointers, they would never do it for them. Moreover, most of the sects in the world took sword refining as an entry task and made their disciples spend decades or even hundreds of years to refine a flying sword spiritual embryo. How could there be no reason for this? Chinong thought that the refining of flying swords was originally an entry skill, and the refining of flying swords was also a cultivation. In the process of refining flying swords, the disciples of the sect were equivalent to personally training a sword cultivator. So how could there be no gains? And the masters and seniors often refined magical weapons. Not only could they use the magical weapons to carry and transfer some karma, they could also weaken their own tribulations, and they could also learn and practice by analogy. The magical weapons that they refined themselves were also several times more powerful in their hands than others. Chinong could not care less about the former, but the latter was in line with his usual way of seeking Tao, knowledge, exploration, experimentation, and innovation. In this world, the Milky Way was only the surface. Chinong's real way was the way of creation. In this way, there was a new possibility for those who ascended to immortality to shed their magical weapons. Chinong calculated and verified that when his primordial spirit touched the mysteries of Nanming Li Fire Sword, Qing Suazing, 9 Condensation Cauldron, Guangqing golden ship, and many other treasures. It triggered an additional spiritual opportunity and was deduced from the mysteries of heaven. Chun Ong sighed. No wonder those old monsters were not moved and only sent their disciples to take the treasures. So there was this layer of calculation. Chun Ong manipulated the mysteries of heaven and used his primordial spirit to pry. Because he had suspicions beforehand, he was able to find some clues. Qing Sua Ziying is a rare treasure from ancient times. Since ancient times, it has been used by someone to shed the karma of the prosperity of the righteous. So it fell into the hands of the Long Brow Saint. Later, when the Long Brow Saint ascended to immortality, he left behind these 2 swords. He actually entrusted his karma with a May to the swords, so that he could successfully ascend. This sword has the great karma of a May's prosperity and protecting it. The owner of the sword has to bear this responsibility, or else it will reverse his fate. It was the Long Brow Saint's plan that the green Sua fell into the hands of the Ancient One. Not only did he cut off most of the Ancient One's fate, but he also took his fate after he was killed. It's really the Amei twin swords. In the hands of Amei it is fate, but for others it will be a disaster. The Nanming Li Fire Sword, the Guangqing Golden Ship, the 9 Condensation Cauldron. No wonder Guang, Qingzi, Dharma, and Saint Emperor Xianyuan left these treasures so easily. I'm afraid that their karma, obsessions, and even their great wishes were entrusted to these treasures. Not only can this help them share their karma, but it can also help them choose the owner of the treasures in the human world, fulfilling their obsessions. If I take these treasures and benefit from them, I will have to bear the karma left behind by them. Haha. If I want to ascend, or if I don't want to bear the karma of protecting the Han Dynasty and preventing the Manchurian Qing from invading, I can also refine a treasure that can bear the karma and give it to someone in the human world who wants to protect the Han Dynasty so that he can bear the karma for me. This seems to be beneficial to both sides. It is also beneficial to the person whom I transfer the karma to, but to those who want to ascend, it is an extremely vicious poison. I'm afraid this is also the reason why Amei exterminated the heterodox and demonic sections. Once they do this, the karma of the treasures, flying swords, that are used to slay demons, will continuously gather in their hands. Amei used the fate of these treasures to complete this tribulation, slay demons, and make Amei prosper. The owners of the treasures also took this opportunity to escape the karma of heaven, achieving a win-win situation. That is why Amei unscrupulously collected all kinds of treasures, immortal abodes, and promoted it. Countless righteous seniors who ascended borrowed Amei's hands to join the tribulation and wash away the karma left behind by ascension. Amei is the white glove of the righteous mystic door. In this tribulation, Amei is the main character. It is the key that the immortals of the spiritual immortal realm and even the heavenly realm borrow Amei's hands to understand the karma of the human world. Spreading it, the immortal abodes, the immortal books, and even the natural treasures planted by people. I'm afraid that the seniors borrow the karma to ward off the tribulation. Thinking of this, Qin Ong touched a trace of the vein of the 500-year immortal tribulation. He was also shocked by the courage and calculation of the Long Brow Immortal who left Amei to collect the karma of the human world before the immortals offended each other and ended the accumulated connection between the spiritual immortal realm, the heavenly realm, and the earthly realm. There are even some sunk treasures. For example, if there is a Buddhist monk who wishes to enlighten all the unorthodox sects and enter the righteous path, his early cultivation will be smooth, but in the end he can't enter the Western Pure Land even if he reincarnates thousands of times and accumulates great merits. Even the 4 great bodhisattvas can't become Buddhas because their great wishes haven't been fulfilled, let alone the Buddha in the human world. At this time he needs to painstakingly refine countless Buddhist treasures, build countless temples, and even establish sects to pass on the Taoist orthodoxy. Only then can he transfer the karma and great wishes to these external Taoist orthodoxies and use them to ascend. In this way, he will be cheating his own disciples and the treasures he left behind will also be sunk costs. Everyone has to pay the debts for him, and only after he has paid off his share can he ascend. Some have received too much of the legacy of the seniors and are destined to lose the chance to ascend. They can only stay in the human world, such as the Red Staff Immortal of the Great Eastern Wasteland, the Six Freaks of the Universe, and some ancient immortals of the West Kunlun. Too sinister. Those righteous mighty figures of the mystic door who have ascended are too sinister, Chen Ong exclaimed. Even if the Lord God is as smart as a ghost, he still has to drink the water that those immortals wash their feet with. If the Lord God dares to covet those treasures, if there is really a time traveler who collects treasures and uses his ability to predict the secrets of heaven to collect the Nanming Li fire sword and the 9 condensation cauldron, then there will be a good show. Chapter 455. Chen Ong calculated and thought at the same time. Finally, he pushed the fate of Shu Mountain to the level of the spiritual immortal realm. He was sure that even the mighty earth spirit in Shu Mountain was not as clear as him about what was behind the net of karma in the human world. This website's new domain name was K1XSW. It was the largest free romance Chinese website. Come quickly. On the surface, the main characters of this tribulation were the second-generation disciples of Amei. Behind the karma of various mighty figures also surfaced. Chen Ong sighed for a while and thought to himself, other than the karma of the Golden Mother sect, the 5 Lakes Narcissus, Master Lianshan, and the Amei sect, the true foundation of Purple Cloud Palace is the karma of suppressing the Sea Eye of East Sea and protecting the living beings of East Sea. If they cultivate blindly and don't take on this responsibility, they will exhaust their good fortune and lose their fate with Purple Cloud Palace. Even without Amei, the 3 phoenixes will definitely suffer because of their actions of building the divine sand passage and killing the living beings of East Sea. Not only did they not take responsibility, but they also caused evil consequences. On the contrary, I used the Yellow River of the 9 Bends to suppress Purple Cloud Palace and refine the Sea Eye to benefit East Sea. Not only did I help Purple Cloud Palace fulfill its fate, but I also became the second successor of Purple Cloud Palace. If Amei didn't help the living beings of East Sea while suppressing Purple Cloud Palace for 1,000 years, when my Yellow River of the 9 Bends to accumulate more merit than them, the fate of this place will fall into my hands. If they didn't repay me with the 9-story palace, this palace will be fated with me after 100 years. 500 years later, if Amei doesn't give Purple Cloud Palace to me, it will suffer. Of course, Amei will definitely calculate the karma of this. Even if they are still ignorant now, they will definitely be able to calculate it after 3 years. 3 years later, my fate and Purple Cloud Palace's fate will be connected. Amei won't give up Purple Cloud Palace. If it was a side palace before, now that it has the fate of East Sea, this is the key resource for Amei's prosperity. With this fate, it can protect 1 person to ascend every 300 years. They will never dare to offend me, who will be the leader of the loose immortals of the eastern and southern seas in the future. According to their usual practice, they will definitely want one of Z or Yun to be my disciple, so that they can inherit my karma. As long as the situation remains the same, I will be the person that Amei will try their best to befriend. I will be the decisive factor for them to inherit the fortune of the 4 seas. As for Mount Amei, it would also become my white glove. Due to the entanglement of karma, they would have to help me in some major matters that were related to me. If you go 1 level deeper, you can play chess with Mount Amei like Guang Qingzi. Chen Ong followed the cause and effect and found that after the trip to the Purple Cloud Palace, as he had predicted in the past, they had chosen to side with the Amei sect. He was even more surprised that he had the possibility of using Mount Amei as a chess piece and a tool like Guang Qingzi in the future. When other transmigrators came to the Shushan world, they dug up treasures everywhere and colluded with the unorthodox sects to go against Shushan. Only Chen Ong scattered treasures everywhere, colluded with Amei, and persecuted the unorthodox sections. He wanted to be a senior of the orthodox path. Now he wanted to use Amei as his own tool and chess piece. He wanted to control this general trend and use it as his chariot to gallop. Chen Ong stood on the cloud and looked down at the four seas from the sky. As far as the eye could see, the sky was unfurled and the boundless sea was surging with waves. The gulls and herons flapped their wings, making people feel a sense of heroism. He made up his mind. Not only would he seize the opportunity to capture the main god, but he would also take root in this world and participate in the future conflict between the heavens and humans. He would explore the truth of the great Tao of this world. Looking at the countless divine gold and true gold in the Nine Bends Yellow River Formation, Chen Ong had the thought of refining them into treasures to verify the many truths of the great Tao that he had comprehended. At the same time, he discovered and learned new things. True gold and divine gold were inanimate objects and had no value if they were not used. Chen Ong was not a miser who collected wealth and piled it up in a treasury. He had always thought that things that could not be used by him had no value. With this thought in mind, he waved his sleeves, and another figure appeared on the celestial river under his feet. It was Fairy Lady Wan Miao, Su Feinyang, who had not shown herself after being trapped in his formation. Su Feinyang was not angry after being imprisoned by him for a long time. After being released from the formation, she even smiled politely and bowed slightly to him. "I thank you for saving me, fellow Taoist. The two elders of Mount Song are the wings of Amei. If I were to fall into their hands, I'm afraid I would not be able to survive. Did fellow Taoist come to the East Sea to search for secrets? I have some good friends who live in the East Sea. I can introduce you to them. It will be more convenient for you to travel around the world if you make many good friends." Chen Ong shook his head and said, "You gave the three phoenixes ideas and made things difficult for me. However, the two elders of Mount Song discussed the karma of Purple Cloud Palace with me. It has nothing to do with the karma between us. Moreover, you did not fall out with them. Even if I hand you over to them, they will not make things difficult for you. Therefore, I do not wish to form any kind of relationship with you. What if you trick me into taking revenge for that old primordial immortal?" With his hands behind his back, Chen Ong said calmly, "Tell me the methods that Wu Tai sect used to refine a few powerful flying swords, and I will let you go." Su Feinyang's eyes darted around, and many ideas came to her mind. She did not take Chen Ang's warning to heart. However, she was the smartest one. If she was not trapped by the vengeance of the primordial immortal, she would not have ended up like this. With a smile, a golden flower appeared in her hand and fell into Chen Ang's hand. She leaped away and left a message with a smile. "Chen Daoyu, even if you don't mind, Feinyang will remember your favor. We will meet again in the future. I only hope that Chen Daoyu will not reject me next time." Once the golden flower fell into Chen Ang's hand, it turned into many words. They were the most ferocious flying swords refined by Wu Tai sect, the Sky Demon Fairy Slaying Sword, the 100 Spirits Fairy Slaying Sword, the 5 Poisons Fairy Sword, and many other secret techniques of Wu Tai sect. Chen Ong only wanted her to leave one of them, but Su Feinyang told him all of them in order to leave a trace of friendship. Even if Wu Tai sect was scattered, this was still a backdoor method. Even if Su Feinyang's identity was special, if F.A. Yuan and the others knew about it, she would still be in a lot of trouble. She might even be stripped of her title as the young mistress. Su Feinyang's willingness to offer such a generous reward showed her determination to recruit Chen Ong. But Chen Ong would never be willing to be used by her. Wu Tai sect's sword refinement method is indeed unique. It is the most powerful method of the side sect. If these flying swords were refined during the time of the primordial immortal, Amei would be in trouble. But now, without the primordial immortal, Wu Tai sect is a bunch of useless people. Even if they were refined, it would not be a problem for Amei. Chin Ong carefully read the words on the golden flower and slowly understood. Chapter 456. On that golden flower, the number 1 sword refining method was recorded. It was the Sky Demon Immortal Slaying Sword that specialized in breaking the treasured light of the righteous path, profound Qi and Buddhist light. It was one of the most powerful flying swords of the unorthodox path. This sword used the innate true gold to train the sword embryo, the 100 poisoned 6 treasures as supplementary materials, and 18 types of poisonous insects in the world to train the sword edge with the primordial pill. One had to carve 108 formless god and demon incantations in the realm of desire to summon the formless heavenly demon from the realm of desire and refine it as the primordial spirit of the sword embryo. After the cultivation was successful, not only would there be 100 poisonous clouds to protect the user, it could also contain countless poisonous creatures into the sword, combining the 6 treasures into one. It also contained the path of refining and controlling demons. It used the formless heavenly demon and was not controlled by the heavenly demon. There were many powerful spells on the sword, which was used to counter the celestial swords of the orthodox sections. It was one of the best sword refining methods in this world. Chun Ong had comprehended the true teachings of Wu Tai sect before. With a wave of his right hand, he dispersed the golden flowers and thought to himself, as expected, these methods of refining swords contain the art of mastering the venomous insect's vitality embryo. Even if the true teachings of Wu Tai sect are not pure enough, even if they can pass the first few stages, they will be harmed by the heavenly demon when they're facing the formless heavenly demon from the realm of desire. Even though founder Han Yuan walked the extreme path, this sword refining method is indeed something that can be used as a reference. Wu Tai sect's sword refining method was different from Chin Ang's. The 12 celestial waterscape sword was a pure sword that pursued sharpness and agility. No matter who it was in, it would be able to unleash the highest power of his sword skills. However, it still matched with Chin Ang's own sword skills, unlike Wu Tai sect's path that pursued the power of the forbidden spell on the sword. There were 2 paths. One was a godly weapon in the hands of a swordsman. Even though it was extremely sharp, it still required a high level of martial arts to wield it. The other was a godly weapon in a game. It came with powerful skills, and even a newbie would be able to unleash its terrifying power. I've comprehended many principles from these sword refining techniques. It's a good time for me to try refining a flying sword that can bear the celestial river's forbidden divine ability. Chun Ong took out some 10,000-year cold iron from the array in his sleeve and released a portion of the power of the yellow river of 9 bends to protect the entire desolate reef. He flicked 2 fingers on his right hand, and a 3-stage true fire floated in midair. This translucent true fire used the Xian Yin poison fire from the underground, the true fire of the sun from the sky as the 2 poles of yin and yang, and the spiritual fire of the human world as the balance. Under the control of Chin Ang's Milky Way magic power, it was like flowing water. With a pull, the essence of the cold iron was extracted into a huge ball. The Milky Way magic power turned into countless incantations and talismans, sealing them in the sword embryo. He then scattered the sword embryo, turning it into a foot-long heavenly river, refining the 10,000-year cold iron into true water. The yellow river of 9 bends set up by Chun Ong created a cloud tide. A strand of Tiani true water shot out from the array and turned into a strand of Milky Way. It combined with the sword embryo and refined the sword until it became invisible, leaving only a circle of transparent water-colored sword gleam. He then used the Samadhi true fire to refine the sword embryo, turning it back into a golden iron. The sword embryo turned from a tangible and tangible fine iron to a shapeless and intangible Milky Way, then to a shapeless and intangible sword gleam, returning to a tangible and tangible fine iron. This process was repeated 7 times. He used the Tiani true water, Xianming true water, first essence heavy water, Taiyin true water, and the other 7 types of innate true water to refine them into Milky Way prohibition. After 3 days of hard work, 7 translucent sword embryos were refined. They were Tianyi, Tain, First Essence, Ruo Shui, Xianming, Azure Sky, and Light of Eternity. In the future, Qinong would use the Milky Way Dharma power to refine the innate true water into talismans. He would refine them layer by layer, and he would be able to refine the restrictive spell on the sword to the full accomplishment. As for now, other than the Tianyi sword embryo, which he had enough Tianyi true water to refine to the full accomplishment, Qinong did not have enough Milky Way Dharma power to refine the other swords. How would he have any left over to refine the swords? He might as well refine them into sword embryos and seal them, leaving them for the fated ones in the future. The 7 sword embryos were named after the 7 types of innate true water, not to mention that each of them contained many powerful innate true water restrictive spells. When put together, they could evolve into the formation diagram of the 7 types of innate true water that Qinong comprehended from the heaven and earth. It was called the Tianyi Water True Form Diagram, and it could recreate the scene when the heaven and earth were born and the endless innate true water created the heaven and earth. Its power was enough to bring the entire planet of Shushan back to the calamity of the primordial flood that destroyed the world. Qinong did not have the intention to create such a restrictive spell. He just followed the mysteries of the heavens to refine the swords, and this was how he came up with such a restrictive spell. He silently used his primordial spirit to comprehend the mysteries of the heavens and earth, and thought to himself, "This sword can only be refined into 6. No matter who it is, if they want to refine the 7th sword, they will have to face endless tribulations. Only one day, when the mysteries of the heavens change and the calamity of the human world is about to arrive, will a fated person suddenly be able to refine this sword and use the 7 flying swords to cleanse the earth and create another era. This is the karma of my comprehension of the Tao of the Milky Way and the calamity of the primordial flood. It is the key to the creation of the next era." After refining this sword embryo, Qinong comprehended some of the secrets of the primordial flood and the calamity of the primordial flood. He had some understanding of the Tao of the Milky Way that destroyed the world. The mana of the Milky Way in his body suddenly fluctuated, and the endless aura of creation and vitality had an additional hint of destruction. With this experience, Qinong continued to refine the pole of the Tianyi True Water Banner, and when the conditions were right, success came naturally. This banner, which entrusted Qinong's comprehension of the Tao of water weaving to control the tides of the 4 seas, no longer needed seawater to condense into a pole. Next, Qinong used the essence of the 5 metals to refine a Triyong golden furnace. He threw all kinds of golden jade cold iron into the furnace, and silently used the Tao of creation. He used the mana of the Milky Way to guide the 9 Bends Yellow River Formation to gather the chi of heaven and earth and the essence of the sun and moon. He controlled the abundant power of heaven and earth to refine the restrictive spell. He refined the embryos of many treasures such as rings, hairpins, vases, pouches, stones, arrows, dagger axes, flying knives, golden nets, round wheels, and many others. Not only did the true Samadhi fire obtain a lot of spiritual chi from the embryos of the treasures, but it also became pure and agile. It also allowed Qinong to verify many magical effects of the chi of vitality and the creation of all things. The magical effects of each treasure's restrictive spell was a principle that Qinong comprehended, and the harvest was really rich. Although magical treasures are only divided by the level of profoundness, there is no classification. But everyone tacitly agrees that large magical treasures such as towers, platforms, buildings, pavilions, ships, formations, and cauldrons are much more difficult than small magical treasures such as mirrors, spears, swords, sabers, and rings, and their abilities are much more extensive. Therefore, even though Shu Mountain was huge, only the Guangqing Golden Ship was worthy of being the number 1 treasure. Amei had many treasures and was rich, but only the Yin and Yang dust formation, which was suppressed by the Tai Ching immortal talisman, was the treasure of Ningsui Cliff. It could be called the treasure of the sect. except for the green and purple double swords, which entrusted the karma between Changmei and Amei. It was vaguely the second and third treasure of Amei. Chen-Ong looked at the many embryos of the treasures floating in the furnace and thought, after I refine these 19 embryos of the treasures, I should also refine a large treasure that incorporates all my understanding and even goes one step further on the Tao of creation as a summary of the merit of creation. Chapter 457. Yes, yes. At this moment, Chen-Ong recalled his idea of looking for a mount when he first set out to sea. After all, the dark nightmare dragon whale was a sea beast raised by the Dachung Sea Nation and belonged to his female disciple. How could he have the face to take it for himself? Chen-Ong wasn't such a shameless person, so he thought about using this opportunity to craft a Dharma treasure that could be used as a means of transportation. In the future, it would also be useful to travel to the North and South Poles. There was no shortage of such Dharma treasures in Shu Mountain. Whether it was the Ju Tianshidi demon shuttle made by Yi Zhou from the mystic tortoise palace of the South Sea, or the green cloud celestial mat that was taken by the golden bearer slave, they were all outstanding. Of course, the most powerful one was the Guangqing golden ship hidden in the water eye of the Yuanjiang River. All of them had endless uses and were excellent for traveling around the world. Of course, Chen-Ong didn't really care about the first 2 Dharma treasures. At most, they were used by itinerant immortals and 1 or 2 good friends to travel around the world. Although they were comfortable, they couldn't hold many things. How could they be favored by a fan of giant ships and cannons like Chen-Ong? Only a mighty and majestic home like the Guangqing golden ship was suitable for traveling in the galaxy. Chen-Ang's idea of crafting large Dharma treasures was different from that of others. If a mighty figure like Guang Qingzi wanted to craft a golden ship, he would also take the path of integrated sacrificial refining, which required extremely powerful Dharma powers and years of hard work. Chen-Ong, on the other hand, was born in a world of science and technology. He had seen many large ships with a displacement of millions of tons and planet-sized battleships. What he liked the most was modularization and standardized construction. Even if he were to craft Dharma treasures now, he would inevitably be affected. In the end, Chen-Ang's design was a large-scale magic treasure composed of dozens of magical treasures that looked marvelous on their own. It was so powerful that it could be said to be the most suitable Dharma treasure for attacking a mountain gate, exterminating living creatures, and destroying the earth veins and mountains. The most important parts were the primeval dragon bone, which acted as the core and pierced through the magic treasure, the hull armor, which was made up of 129,600 pieces of star magic dragon scales, the sun god's fire wings, which were shaped like 6 huge golden wings, the Yin-Yang Two Modes creation thunderball, which acted as the energy source, and the Tai 5 elements divine thunder tower, which acted as the weapon. Of course, the materials and abilities that Chen-Ong possessed right now were not enough to complete the entire concept. Hence, the dragon skeleton was reduced to 4 times its original size, and only 1 pair of the 6 sun god fiery wings remained. The star magic-resistant dragon scale armor was reduced to 1,800 pieces, and the Yin-Yang creation thunderball was temporarily used as the energy source. Wait, I'll first make a shrunken version to verify the technology. This was a magic treasure that could only be used in large-scale planar wars. Naturally, it could not be refined by relying on the true Samadhi fire. With such a firepower, it would probably take forever to melt and refine these millions of kilograms of materials. If Chen-Ong had not used the power of the Eye of the Sea to refine the 9 Bends Yellow River Formation, which could borrow the power of heaven and earth, which was equivalent to the mana of hundreds of individual immortals working together, he would not even dare to have such an idea. Even so, Chen-Ong still wanted to find a place that could provide a huge amount of firepower. It would be best if there was a metal mine nearby that could replenish the materials so that he would not have to worry about the lack of metal. If this magic treasure was refined, even if it was a shrunken version, Chinong would still dare to use it to break into a maze yin and yang dust formation. Other than the metamagnet divine light, it did not have the power of any formation or magic treasure. Even if it was the metamagnet divine light, only the north and south poles of the planet could restrain it. The Earth's crust magnetism, like the copper coconut island, could not. Other than the Moon Island and the volcano Sea of Fire, there's no other place that can provide such firepower. Chin-Ong clapped his hands and laughed. Then he pondered and said, "The Moon Island is far away in the wilderness of the North Pole. It is probably millions of miles away from here. It would take a long time to use the sword energy to travel there." After that, he put away the 9 Bends Yellow River Formation and called his female disciple, Ling Sha, who had brought the Longjing back. He said, "I need to go to the Moon Island and make a treasure that can be used for transportation. You can travel around the Great Cheong Sea Nation first. If there is anything, you can use this talisman to inform me." He pointed with his finger, and a wisp of heavenly river Dharma power condensed into a palm-sized ice crystal that contained a trace of Xianming Dharma power. Ling Sha took the talisman obediently and said, "Take care, master." Chin-Ong smiled faintly and silently used his primordial spirit to pinch his fingers to correspond with the stars in the sky. With a turn of his body, he followed the movement of the stars and moved thousands of miles away from the North Pole. Like a flash of lightning, he traveled thousands of miles in an instant. Not long after, he felt a gust of hot wind. The starlight disappeared, and he landed on the ground. Looking around, Chin-Ong had landed on an isolated island covered in ice and snow. The mountain shape was abnormally steep and dangerous. One side of the island was facing the sea, so it must be a barren land near the North Pole. The sea was full of small rocks that were the size of small mountains. They collided with each other with the wind and waves, and the rumbling sounds were endless. The big fish in the sea were like giant whales that were 10 to 20 feet long. They moved in groups of 3 to 5 and raised their heads from time to time. This was the volcano of the Moon Island in the North Pole. It was the place where Master Lianshan's remains and treasures were hidden. It was also the cauldron of the earth orifice. The Sea of Fire was not ordinary fire, nor was it the poisonous fire formed by the Xian Yin in the earth lungs. Instead, it was the Yang fire that contained the essence of the Nan Mingli fire and the true fire of the sun. Even golden-bearded slave, who had the body of the Nan Mingli fire, and Ho Wuching, who had the nature of fire, could not guarantee their safety. Chin-Ong absorbed the water around the Moon Island and set up the formation of the Yellow River of 9 Bends around the island. He also let Macho swim in the formation to devour the essence of fire and fuse it with the pure water to increase her cultivation base and physique. He then released the countless thousand-year-old refined iron and 5 metals that he had collected in the eye of the Sea of Purple Cloud Palace. He then used the earth fire and the true fire of the Moon Island to fuse them with the essence of the sun. He neutralized the 5 metals and the Xian Yin poison fire that contained a bit of the Xian Yin quality. This fusion of Yin and Yang improved the quality of the materials. He then used the power of the Yellow River of 9 Bends to draw upon the power of the heaven and earth to excavate the earth fire copper and 1,000-year-old refined copper in the volcanic vein of the Moon Island. He used the divine sand bundle to attack the earth's crust and grind the earth fire copper into or sand. He then gathered the true fire in the Sea of Fire and refined it into pure earth fire copper. Chin-Ong raised the Tiani True Water Banner and used it to suppress the eye of the Yellow River of 9 Bends, doubling the power of the formation. He then used the vastness of the North Sea to suppress the might of the Sea of Fire of the Moon Island, allowing the formation to operate without being affected. Otherwise, since the Milky Way formation was of the water attribute, its power would be greatly reduced in the Sea of Fire. It would even damage the quality of the formation. He then released the true fire of Samadhi, drawing upon the true fire of the sun that great Master Lianshan had accumulated for 1,000 years. He then cast out layers of restrictions and sealed the true fire of the sun into the 5 metals. After refining 9 layers of restrictions, he spent a month of hard work to refine a pair of fire wings of the sun that were 1,000 feet long. They seemed to be made of pure gold and shone resplendently under the sunlight. At this moment, the acquired true gold that Qinong had refined was piled up to the side. It was the stellar, devil-resistant gold. It had absorbed enough power of the stars and changed its essence. Under Qineng's refinement, it was divided into a piece that was a foot long and shaped like a dragon's scale. Piece by piece, Qinong painstakingly refined them with the power of the formation. 2 months later, they suddenly merged into one. The scales stacked on top of each other. 18,000 pieces of stellar, devil-resistant gold combined to form a huge ship. The keel was 1,000 feet long, and the ship's body was incomparably huge. Many other parts came out of the 3-yang furnace. There were dozens of parts, and each of them was refined with 6 layers of restrictions. Looking at them separately, they weren't bad, transcendent artifacts. Finally, all the parts were assembled into a long and narrow ship. Although it had a classical style, it had a sci-fi style from the industrial era. The ship's body had a geometric structure that couldn't be erased. Its streamlined shape carried a brand that this world couldn't understand, but was deeply imprinted in the depths of Qineng's primordial spirit. Now that everything was ready, he only had to wait for the storm on the Moon Island and the thunder to strike. Then he could take the opportunity to refine the power core of the ship, the Yin-Yang Divine Thunderball. Chapter 458. The 2 pieces of divine magnetic iron were being nourished by Qineng's true flame. At the same time, his hands were constantly casting out many thunder talismans, turning the surrounding water and fire essence qi, as well as the natural energies of the world, into thunder talisman restrictions of yin and yang magnetic poles. These thunder talisman restrictions were inserted into the 2 Tai Chi-shaped 3-dimensional metal fish. The divine magnetic iron was the main material of the yin-yang creation Thunderball. Only the special properties of the divine magnetic iron could produce the yin and yang magnetic poles and provide an inexhaustible power core. Thunder was the pivot of the changes of yin and yang, and the yin and yang magnetic poles were the most likely to produce thunder. The yin and yang original magnetic divine light produced by the restriction of the original magnetic divine iron would undergo the yin and yang transformation in the yin and yang ball, which would produce the inexhaustible power to drive the golden ship, the divine thunder of creation, which would provide the energy for the giant ship to move forward. This was the principle of the yin and yang creation thunderball. The yin and yang referred to the yin and yang magnetic divine light, and the yin and yang referred to the restriction and structure of the ball. The divine thunder of creation was the final product of the thunder ball. Divine magnetic iron was mostly produced in the north and south poles, as well as in the core of the Earth's crust. These 2 pieces of divine magnetic iron that had been refined into artifact embryos were refined from a few ores that had been brought out of the Earth's core by magma when Qinong was exploring the fire cave of Moon's Child Island. Qinong had already refined the weapon embryo several months ago. However, the restriction of the thunderball needed the heavenly thunder essence qi to advance to a higher level. Refining the yin and yang lightning talismans with the power of the Milky Way would not only take a long time, but it would also affect the ultimate power of the restriction. The yin and yang creation thunderball was the most important core of the golden ship. It had to have at least 24 layers of restriction, so it couldn't be sloppy. Fortunately, Qinong had predicted that there would be a storm in the North Pole in the next few days, and there would be thunderstorms that would last for nearly a month. Therefore, he left the task of refining the thunderball until now. At this moment, there was a sudden gale on the sea surface, and the thunder and lightning were like dragons and snakes. With such a huge object, like the golden ship here, all the thunder and lightning within hundreds of miles of the sea gathered here and bombarded the golden ship. Qinong took this opportunity to polish the restriction in the golden ship and absorb the heavenly thunder essence qi to turn them into divine talismans to refine the thunder ball. Qinong stood on the golden ship. The sun god fire wings shone brightly in the thunderstorm. Facing the wind and rain, he spread out his huge golden wings. The thunderbolts struck the golden wings, and they slithered along the body of the ship like flood dragons. The deck, which was made of star refining fiend true gold, was stacked together like dragon scales. Amidst the ravaging thunder and lightning, it wriggled like a living creature, and its scales were vivid and lifelike. The entire golden ship was like a rock, wriggling its body and showering in the thunder and lightning. The golden ship rose into the sky, dashing into the dark clouds against the storm. It flapped its gigantic wings as hard as it could. The feathers on the wings that were wrapped in the true sun fire glowed with a golden light, swallowing the ninth heaven thunder fire brought down by the thunder power and transforming it into many ancient golden spell symbols, refining the pair of wings on their own. The body of the ship, the keel, the stern, and even the hidden divine thunder cannon on the deck were all greedily swallowing the heavenly thunder essence chi. However, at least 90% of the heavenly thunder chi rushed into the core of the golden ship. In the ball of thunder formed by the two Tai Chi yin-yang fishes, the enormous heavenly thunder essence chi was broken down by Chenong into countless yin and yang thunder spell symbols, layer by layer covering the ball of thunder and continuously increasing the number of restrictive spells. Refining an immortal treasure was a painstaking effort, and it was not something that could be done in a day. Therefore, Chenong was not in a hurry. Instead, he used this opportunity to comprehend the divine metamagnet light of Mount Shu and transform it into heavenly thunder. At the same time, he absorbed the 5 elements chi from time to time, transforming it into heavenly thunder of 5 elements according to his understanding, and continuously striking it out, changing the taste of the thunderball. The storm did not stop for 7 days. Chenong knew that it was not unusual for a storm like this to rage on the sea for a few months. If he was willing to put in some effort, he could even find a place where the storm would not stop all year round. In these few days, with the golden ship's method of swallowing the heavenly thunder essence chi within a radius of 1,000 miles, Chenong had already pushed the thunderball restrictive spell to the 21st layer. The rest of the work could not be done overnight, and some time could be taken slowly. Chenong also felt that the hull of the ship was too domineering. Fortunately, the golden ship could shrink and shrink at will. Although it was still very shocking, at least it was not as conspicuous as before. Sometimes, when he was tired of the scenery in the thunderstorm, Chenong would also drive the golden ship above the clouds, while refining the true fire of the sun, increasing the essence of the true fire of the sun and the true fire of Samadhi. He would also enjoy the tranquil and peaceful sky, the surging wind and clouds under his feet, and the raging waves of the sea. This would also give him time to comprehend and think. Suddenly, in the surging thunderstorm below his feet, there was a ray of white light, like lightning, swimming in the clouds, until it wedged into the clouds. This ray of white light was also a little strange. Wherever it passed, the thunderbolts seemed to be attracted, intertwining and converging on the white light, layer by layer, forming a rolling and flowing sea of thunderbolts. Chun-Ang's primordial spirit keenly felt that what the white light cast was an invisible power of restrictive spell, as if in this 10,000 miles of thunderclouds there was a terrifying power accumulated. At this time his golden ship was almost completed. Because it was driven by the divine thunder and magnetic force, it was called the magnetic golden ship of creation. He did not have to worry about getting into any trouble. Instead, he had an urge to provoke some enemies, to test the power of the 12 layers of magnetic forbidden spell, 12 layers of divine thunder forbidden spell, 12 layers of divine fire and true water forbidden spell, a total of 36 layers of Tai Huang creation tribulations. Therefore, he put his hands on it, and after 6 to 8 hours he saw some clues. This cultivator seemed to be using the power of nature to accumulate a powerful thunder technique, to unleash the power of his white light magical treasure. It was just that his ability was not good, and the quality of the magical treasure was not good. After being stimulated by the thunderbolts, it could only be used once before it was destroyed. Looking at his unorthodox magical power, that lightning magical treasure that could emit white light to protect himself was probably a treasure that he treasured as much as his life, and there was nothing on this Moon-Child Island that was worth sacrificing. Chien Ong thought for a while, and concluded that he was most likely here for the treasure of Great Master Lianshan in the fire cave of the Moon-Child Island. This Moon-Child Island's treasure would be opened once every 52 years, and when the time came, all sects would be allowed to enter the sea to search for the treasure. Every time the sea opened, it would only last for a day. Each person was only allowed to choose one item at a time. If there were more, it would be a spell restriction, and they would be trapped in the sea of fire. Those who did not know the details would not be able to calculate the date of the sea opening. Those who knew the details would need to have the protection of a rare fire-repelling treasure in order to go down. There were still a few years before the sea opening, but Chien Ong had calculated that this was the period when the fire cave of the earth orifice was in a slight decline. Although the sea of fire was more powerful than when the sea was opened, it was also a lot calmer. Moreover, Chien Ong had spent a lot of firepower to refine the gold transformation ship, so it might be more convenient to go down now than when the sea was opened. Of course, this kind of accident, even the Earth Spirit Masters could not calculate, not to mention the unorthodox, magical power of the person below. He probably wanted to take advantage of the short period of peace in the Sea of Fire to break Great Master Lianshan's restriction with the Thunder Restriction Technique, and go down to search for a treasure, the Heavenly Book. This kind of method that used the Thunder Technique to replace the fire-repelling treasure, if used at other times, might instead activate the restriction. But at this time, first use the Heaven's Thunder to test. Activate the restriction a few times to exhaust the power of the restriction, and then go down in one go. It might be fruitless. Chapter 459. Chien Ong did not want to get involved in other people's business. So what if the person buried the treasures in the fire cave? Now, there was only one treasure left from Master Lianshan's inheritance. The fire scripture was obtained by Ho-Wume. The remaining treasure was the treasure that Master Lianshan used to subdue demons. It was called the Separation and Reunion Tablet. This tablet was a talisman formed by the combination of yin and yang. The yang talisman was hidden in the golden boat at the center of the Yuanjiang River, while the yin talisman was hidden here. Chien Eng's primordial spirit knew that the yang talisman had many karmic ties with Master Lianshan and Mauname, as well as some karmic ties with Guang Chengzi, hidden in the boat for many years. The latter karmic ties had been dissolved, leaving only the yang talisman and Mauname, which should have been obtained by Yu Yingnan. The yin talisman was Master Lianshan's vow to dissolve the fire calamity of the Moon Island. It was left for Yu Yingnan to break through the fire cave and pour out the fire, not to mention the shallow mana of the unorthodox school in the clouds. Which rogue cultivator from the four seas would dare to covet this treasure? Even if they had mana to suppress the fire cave and dissolve the calamity, they would not dare to provoke the natural karmic ties of the yin and yang of the tablet. What did it have to do with the general trend of Mount Ame? As for the fire scripture, it was entrusted by Master Lianshan to the unorthodox school in his later years. It should have been given to Ho-Wume, a rogue celestial from another school. However, because he coveted the Separation and Reunion Tablet, he put Yu Yingnan in a difficult position due to the entanglement of karmic ties. In the end, he lost himself in it and became her disciple. Who would dare to touch such a hot potato? However, Chien Eng's primordial spirit suddenly moved, and he understood the mysteries of heaven. He calculated with his fingers and realized that the Separation and Reunion Tablet hidden in the fire cave had a trace of fate with him. If he entered the fire cave, the tablet would definitely come to him. This made Chien Ong feel strange. Master Lianshan had never met him, so why would he let the tablet come to him? Thinking about it, it turned out that he used the fire of the fire cave to make the golden boat, which consumed a lot of the poisonous flames that had been accumulated in the volcano of the Moon Island for thousands of years. This reduced a lot of the calamity. It could be said that he participated in resolving the fire calamity of the fire cave and contributed a little. That was not all. The fire calamity of the Yu-Air Island was a scheme planned by Great Master Lianshan for 1,000 years. No matter how great Qin-Ang's contribution was, it could not be overshadowed by him. 1,000 years ago, he had already decided that this treasure belonged to Mount Amei. How could he simply change it? But, as luck would have it, the North Pole Sea eye was suppressed under the geocentric fire cave of Yu-Air Island. This underground volcano was originally dormant underground, and its fire warmed a lot of the seawater in the North Pole. Then, the North Pole Sea eye swallowed the seawater, causing the North Pole Sea to transform. Due to these two factors, this warm sea area was originally a paradise for the creatures of the Arctic Sea. Tens of thousands of years ago, fate shifted and a great calamity descended. The volcano at the bottom of the Moon Island erupted, annihilating countless creatures and creating boundless killing karma. The Moon Island responded to the calamity, and the fire was intense. Under the shift of the Earth's crust, the original eye of the sea was suppressed, cutting off a chance of survival for the Arctic creatures. He had to wait for Master Lianshan to dissolve the fire hole and for Moon, our island, to sink into the eye of the sea. Only then would he have the chance to wait for the eye of the sea to come out. But by that time, it would already be a matter of 1,000 years later. But it just so happened that Qin-Ang had created the great formation of the Nine Bends Yellow River. This formation was a blessing to the four seas, and its fate lasted for a long time. It was unknown how many creatures of the four seas it could benefit. In terms of power, it was not as good as the great formation of Amei Yin and Yang Dust. But in terms of fate, after refining the four-pole sea eye of the four seas, it was enough to suppress a large sect. If Qin-Ang established a sect with this, it would definitely be the #1 sect in the four seas, not losing to Amei. With the suppression of the great formation of the Nine Bends Yellow River, the North Pole Sea eye of Yu-Air Island could come into being 1,000 years earlier. Combining the original geocentric fire cave and suppressing it as the eye of the formation, it could produce a warm current in the barren land of the North Pole. Within 10 years, with this formation, the creatures of the North Pole Sea could increase by 50%. After 100 years, when the sea eye of Yu-Air Island was formed, the warm current of the North Pole Sea eye of Yu-Air Island would merge into the North Pole Sea. This blessed land of creatures could increase the number of creatures of the North Pole Sea by a few times. With this kind of fate external cultivation, the four seas would be affected. All the seniors who cultivated in the four seas, and the treasured weapons that entrusted the karma of the four seas, would all be fated with Qin-Ang. Even their original owners would have to give them to Qin-Ang, hoping to get a share of it. At this moment, the Separation and Reunion 5 Cloud Tablet in the fire cave of Yu-Air Island was unable to enter Qin-Ang's embrace. This was already due to Great Master Lianshan's contribution in extinguishing the fire, and the reason why Qin-Ang had yet to open the sea eye. Otherwise, if Great Master Lianshan kept the Separation and Reunion 5 Cloud Tablet, his fate would be reversed and his external cultivation would not be perfect. As for the Sun Tablet lost in Amei, with the natural fate of the Yin and Yang tablets, the one who would suffer loss would definitely not be Qin-Ang, who was fated with the Separation and Reunion 5 Cloud Tablet. Of course, if Amei wanted to give the Sun Tablet to Qin-Ang, Qin-Ang would not want it. With long-brow spiritual master's meticulous calculations, he would definitely take the initiative to give it to Qin-Ang. With this fate, he could take a share of Qin-Ang's fortune that was blessed by the four seas. Who knew if it could help the people of Amei to become immortals? How could treasured weapons compare to ascension? If they could exchange the treasured weapons for fate, it would help them to free themselves from the karma of heaven and earth. Not only would they be able to ascend smoothly, they could also increase their celestial grade. Many seniors and experts in the world would fight to do this. Now, it was also because of Qin-Ang's profound cultivation that he could suppress his own fate that the loose immortals of the four seas would not be able to rack their brains and scheme to establish a relationship with him. Otherwise, when he opened up the four extreme sea eye to suppress the four seas, causing the destiny of the outer seas to flourish, countless powerful beings hiding in the four seas would come out. Some of them would turn into tribulations to obstruct him. Some of them would come to his aid. All 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 of them would come to his. It would also be counted in the 500-year immortal calamity. At that time, when Chun-Ong attacked the islands of the four seas and opened the sea eye, there would be countless demons coming to stop him, and countless swordsmen of the four seas coming to help. It would be no less than the great calamity of the Amaze sect. However, if he opened the sea eye of the Moon Island now, the movement would be so big that even Chun-Ong would not be able to hide it. Under the circulation of the North Pole's fate, all the seniors and experts in the world with profound cultivation would probably be able to peek at it. At that time, it would not be up to Chun-Ong himself. He would definitely be pushed by the heavens to become the main character of the calamity of the four seas. In addition to the great calamity of the Amaze sect, he would also open the great calamity of the four seas and Chun-Ang sect. He would become a twin Lianhua in the fate of this world. The complexity of the calculations and the wide implications were far beyond Chun-Ang's expectations. After all, who would have thought that a loose immortal from an unorthodox sect would be able to get involved in such a great calamity? It was comparable to the 1,003 calamities of the overseas immortals. Indeed, under the circulation of the heavenly Tao, fate is involved, and it is difficult to go against the will of the heavens. Even someone like me who descended from the outer realm, whose strength far exceeds this world, could not escape the calculations. In this world's heavenly Tao's net of laws, the wonders of karma can also be seen. Either I give up on opening the sea eye of the four seas, or I become half the main character of this calamity. It's really hard for me to choose. Chun-Ong sighed. Why would people of my generation be afraid of schemes? I have long heard that the world of the immortal Tao has its own ingenuity of schemes. It is the most powerful in the battles between the heavens and the 10,000 worlds. Chun-Ong is not talented, but he would also like to experience it and fight against this fate net of laws. I can take the opportunity to involve the chief god in this karma. Under this karma, it will definitely expose most of its background. This is also a good opportunity. Chapter 460. Chun-Ong originally planned to release the restriction himself, thinking that the person below should be able to see it. However, he seemed to be a careless and stupid person, concentrating on collecting the Thunder Sea and did not pay attention to the surroundings above his head. As a result, Chun-Ang's golden ship of fate had been suspended above for an hour, but it was too late for him to discover it. Just as Chun-Ong was about to put down the golden ship to be discovered by the careless, unorthodox, sect-wandering immortal, a colorful flowing light flew up from the thunder clouds in the sky. On the flowing light was a woman who shouted, "Who are you? Why are you spying on my brother's refinement technique?" This woman pressed down on a magic artifact that looked like a red caltrop and purposely spread her voice far away. As expected, the wandering immortal who controlled the white light heard it. The white light flew over in a panic and broke through the thunder clouds to stand beside the colorful cloud. When Chun-Ong looked at it, he was slightly shocked and thought, could these unorthodox sect-wandering immortals from overseas have a better life than their kind in Middle-earth? The 2 demons that I killed at Chixia Mountain were not as rich as them. Even their magic artifacts were poor. It was the same for that female immortal Meng. But these overseas unorthodox immortals not only have much higher cultivation, even their magic artifacts are more profound. In comparison, female immortal Meng is suffering too much. At the same age and fate, this girl's magic power is probably 10 times stronger than hers. In the blink of an eye, the white light dispersed and revealed a young and handsome man. He held a white iron-silver awl in his hand and looked at Qinong suspiciously. When his gaze swept past the golden ship under Cheneng's feet, he was secretly shocked. His face could not help but reveal a serious expression. Even though the golden ship looked pure gold and flashy, the young man had some knowledge and knew that this magic artifact was 10 times stronger than the lightning chasing awl in his hand. Under the shock, he did not dare to move easily. He bowed and asked, "I am Wangang of the North Pole Divine Wilderness Reef. This is my sister Wanwan. May I ask who you are? Why are you spying on my refinement technique?" Jiao Fei smiled and said, "I am a wandering immortal from Middle-earth. Just call me Qinong. Because of the sacrificial golden ship, I heard that there is a sea of fire in the volcano of Moonchild Island that has the most firepower and can nourish my magic artifact, so I came from far away. After cultivating here for several months, because of the thunderstorm, he temporarily rested above the clouds. After that, fellow Taoist came here to cultivate. I saw that fellow Taoist's momentum was great, and you must have something important to do, so I didn't come down to disturb you." Only then did the siblings of the Wan family heave a sigh of relief. Wangang's gaze swept over the golden boat beneath Qin Ang's feet. The more he thought about it, the more he felt that the power of this treasure was extraordinary. A thought came to his mind, and he asked Qinong, "Since fellow Taoist refined the golden boat in the Sea of Fire, I presume that this treasure is not afraid of the raging fire demon flame in the fire cave. Is it able to avoid fire and break through restrictions?" Qinong snickered. "I have been waiting for you." He said cheerfully, "That's right. My golden ship of creation can split metal and break fire. It can travel freely in water and soil. May I know what business you have with me?" When Wangang heard this, he believed it without a doubt and said happily, "Fellow Taoist came at the right time. Fellow Taoist, do you know that under the volcano of Yu-Er Island, there are many treasures refined by Master Lianshan, the leader of the Lianshan order in the past, as well as the Heavenly Book of Remains? He even hid his own orthodoxy within. Every 52 years, the sea opens up once, and people are allowed to go down to take the treasures. The reason I refined this chasing thunder-forbidden technique is to break through the restriction of the fire cave and go down to explore. If fellow Taoist's golden boat helps, there will be no need to worry." He cupped his fists and said to Qinong knew the inside story better than them. Moreover, these two Master Lianshan was one of the 3 founding masters of the Mei sect. If they didn't know such important news, they probably didn't know that there was only one treasure hidden in the fire cave either. Risking his life to explore, but ending up empty-handed, made Qinong sigh. Moreover, looking at her temperament, there was no evil, restless, or hostile air. It could be seen that she usually cultivated her mind and character and didn't commit any killing, even though the woman used the conveyance light to conceal her appearance. But how powerful was Qin Ang's Dharma vision? What difference was there between this kind of light and nothing else? Their innate aptitude wasn't bad either, other than the fact that their mana was unorthodox and the cultivation method they cultivated was shallow. They weren't inferior to the disciples of the mystic door of Middle-earth. With the intention to help them, Qinong cupped his fists and said, "Fellow Taoist's words are very kind, but there's one concern that Qinong has to mention. This creation is unpredictable, and Master Lianshan's hidden treasure is so precious. If there's a dispute, it won't be good." Wangang laughed and said, "I know fellow Taoists can be entrusted. Don't worry about this. Master Lianshan has already made arrangements." He also heard Wan Ruan's charming laugh beside him. Yu-Er Island only opens up the sea for a day every time. Even though we broke through the restriction and entered, we can't resist Master Lian Shan's restriction. Fellow Taoist, do you know that Master Lian Shan has already informed everyone that they can only choose one treasure at a time? If there's more, they'll be trapped in the sea of fire. So what fellow Taoist is worried about is easy. As long as you don't covet other people's possessions, we'll be fine. Wan Ruan's voice was filled with pride, but from what Chenong could tell, the siblings were magnanimous and didn't have any intention of harming him after they left the Forbidden Land. Everyone can choose one treasure at a time. When the gold-beard slaves of Purple Cloud Palace went down, almost all of them were taken. Is Lian Shan's face swollen? Chenong laughed in his heart. In the end, Chenong muttered to himself for a moment and revealed a little about the situation in the fire cave, saying, "But what if there's only one treasure left in the hidden treasure? What do we do?" Wangang shook his head in disbelief. "Among the 4 seas, I've only heard that Yu Air Island's sea of fire is powerful. Every time we go to retrieve the treasure, there'll be many unruly people dragging us down. I've never heard of anyone succeeding. That's why I took advantage of the time when the sea of fire was silent to forcefully break through the restriction and enter. Master Lian Shan is merciful. Every 52 years is the natural period of the sea of fire. If we go down now, we won't make things difficult for him. Me and my sister only ask for a heavenly book talisman manual to cultivate again. If there's only one treasure below, we won't take it and give it to fellow Taoist. If there's only a heavenly book manual left, fellow Taoist can just give it to us." Upon hearing this, Chenong smiled slightly. He pointed at the golden ship and released the restriction, allowing the 2 of them to board. These 2 siblings boarded the golden ship. The elder brother, Wangang, was still fine. He had manners when he walked. Even though he was young, he didn't let others look down on him. On the other hand, his sister, Wan, was innocent and unaffected. She looked around the golden ship and was rather surprised. She only calmed down after her brother secretly scolded her a few times. Chenong said, "Fellow Taoist, please show me the way. Let me drive the golden ship down." Wangang hurriedly said, "No hurry, no hurry. You want me to use the Heavenly Thunder Forbidden spell to test the Sea of Fire's restriction. After some of its power is released, we can work together, without waiting for him to finish." Chenong controlled the golden ship to turn into a golden light and entered the Sea of Fire. The golden ship was wrapped in 36 layers of restriction. It could separate the metal and the fire as if it was traveling on flat ground. Without waiting for Wangang to say anything, it had already sailed calmly in the Sea of Fire. The blazing demon flames in the surroundings surged up. They were extinguished when they were reflected by the golden light of the golden ship. There were also 2 sun god fire wings that opened up facing the Sea of Fire and swallowed the chi of the fire essence. Chapter 461. Even though the golden ship of magnetism was only at the initial stage, it was the culmination of Chenong's Tao of creation. Even if it sank into the earth-lung Sea of Fire and roamed in the earth-core Xianin land, it would be nothing, let alone a little bit of earth-core poison flame that leaked out from the earth's crust. The surrounding true fire swept up and was flapped by the 2 sun god fire wings. It turned into countless tiny red talismans and stuck to the ship to increase the power of the prohibition. Chenong stood at the bow of the ship and used his primordial spirit to control it. The yin-yang magnetism, creation divine thunderball in the core, sensed the vast chi of magnetism from the Earth's core. It started operating and absorbed it into countless magnetic talismans. In an instant, it turned into a huge amount of creation divine thunder mana. With this, the golden ship didn't need Chenong to control it. It turned into a beam of golden light and separated Master Lianshan's prohibition spell to protect the fire cave. It escaped into an extremely luxurious palace. Ever since the golden-bearded slave killed the cave guardians and caused an earthquake on the Moonchild Island, the situation in the palace had changed. The once beautiful cave was filled with boiling lava. The stone door of the cave where Master Lianshan hid his treasures was closed. Wan Gang saw the door and was so excited that he forgot everything else. It was Wan who saw her brother's infatuated look and felt embarrassed. She pinched him in annoyance before she came back to her senses. Wan Gang said in shame, "I was careless and underestimated the Moonchild Island's sea of fire prohibition. I thought I could break the prohibition spell and get the treasures with this little trick. Today, on Taoist's golden ship, I saw the vastness of the sea of fire. Now I know how powerful it is. If it wasn't for the protection of Taoist's golden ship, we would have to risk our lives to have a glimmer of hope. We relied on Taoist's golden ship to protect us. It's hard for us to repay you. How about this? We can take 2 treasures. Apart from the heavenly tomes that are related to our cultivation, we can give the other one to you. You can also engrave the heavenly tomes." It was also because of their good fortune that Chen Ang's impression of the Wan siblings increased greatly. He thought, "These 2 people's temperament is so outstanding that I'm embarrassed to let them be my test mice. Fine, I'll fulfill their wish this time." Chen Ang shook his head and smiled. He pointed at the golden ship, and the yin-yang magnetic divine thunderball floated up from the hull of the ship. Then he gestured to the siblings of the Wan family and said, "Fellow Taoist, why did you say that? If not for your guidance, would I have been able to find where great Master Lianshan hid his treasures? I'm afraid that you've passed by a mountain of treasures without realizing it, and will return empty-handed. This is a matter that benefits both of us. Why must we divide it so clearly? If fellow Taoist still feels that I've suffered a loss, then give me the lightning essence you've collected to refine a magic treasure and use it to pay for the ship." Hearing this, the younger sister of the Wan clan said somewhat embarrassedly, "The treasure of the moon, our island, has been widely spread among the loose immortals overseas. It's not a secret." But since Chanong said so, Wan Gang could only draw out the thunder essence energy that he had accumulated over the years, turn it into a plasma-like mass in his hand, and throw it into the divine thunderball. Chin Ong operated the yin and yang poles of the divine thunderball, separating and combining and decomposing the thick thunder essence energy into countless yin-yang lightning talismans, raising the level of the prohibition by another level. Just as Chin Ong was about to operate the golden ship to break the prohibition of the stone door, the 2 stone doors suddenly opened for no reason, and slowly parted to the sides. It seems that old man Lianshan is quite tactful. He knows that the prohibition of the stone door can't stop me, so he simply let me go. Chin Ong laughed in his heart, but said, "It seems that great Master Lianshan is taking care of us and forgave us for missing the schedule, allowing us to enter." The siblings of the Wan family couldn't help but be overjoyed. They kowtowed to thank him, and then respectfully walked in. Looking inside, it was a large hall. The color of the stone was like jade, and the traces of various magic treasures that were left on the 4 walls in the past were all gone. On the front wall, the shadow of the great master's remains appeared. He wore a feather robe and a star crown, looking handsome and elegant like a golden immortal Dara. He knew that although the great master didn't appear, he was still able to pay his respects, which showed that they were fated. He concluded that this trip was not in vain, and was even more delighted. Chin Ong was still waiting to see what great master Lianshan was up to, but he saw Lianshan's shadow smiling at him, and suddenly said, "Lianshan greets fellow Taoist." This kind of behavior in the daytime made the siblings of the Wan family confused. It was even more bizarre than seeing a ghost. Luckily, there were many such things in Shu, and they had read many stories about their predecessors, so they could still gather their thoughts in a very short time. They kowtowed and said, "The siblings of the Wan family of the divine wilderness reef of the North Pole greet great master Lianshan." Wan saw that Chin Ong was still smiling and was shocked. She hurriedly went to pull him, but she heard great master Lianshan's shadow say, "Don't be in a hurry to pull Chin Daoyu." Chun Daoyu's cultivation and age are not below mine. When he was refining treasures on the Sea of Fire, we could be considered to have known each other. His supernatural powers and mana are even better than mine. It's only because of his rebirth that his appearance is young. Chen Ong nodded and cupped his hands, saying, Rogue, cultivator Chen Ong greets fellow Taoist Lian Shan. The siblings of the Ruan family were so shocked by this sudden change that they couldn't even move their eyeballs. Someone like Great Master Lian Shan was already a legend to them. Who would have thought that this companion, who walked side by side with them, who chatted happily with them, was also at the level of this kind of old immortal? The little sister of the Ruan family's delicate and cute little face deeply portrayed the state of stupefaction. Of course, she wouldn't be like the female cultivators in some novels, who stood up to complain or turn hostile and do all kinds of actions that were said to be tsundere, but were actually stupid. She also didn't use her eyes to complain, to be persistent, and to show her cold face to show that she was delicate, noble, and arrogant. Otherwise, Chen Ong wouldn't be able to learn from those seniors who were bewitched by beauty and soul. He could only send her into samsara with a bolt of lightning, and then learn the principles of Taoist cultivators to be cautious and respectful, and to respect their seniors. It could be seen that she couldn't be the heroine of a novel, and was only fated to be with Chen Ong in terms of cultivation. The siblings of the Ruan family didn't know that Chen Ong had these strange thoughts in his mind. They were well educated and respectfully thanked Chen Ong for sending them in, so that they wouldn't have to go through the fire disaster. They didn't covet their previous friendship, and only treated Chen Ong as a slightly close senior. Then Great Master Lian Shan said, You two juniors have outstanding aptitude, and your temperament is good, so I like you very much. If Chen Daoyu wasn't here, I would indeed have the intention to entrust Lian Shan order to you. But since Chen Daoyu is willing to travel with you, he must want to train you. After all, Lian Shan order is an unorthodox school, and even I have been dragged down by it. Compared to it, it's not a good future. Chen Daoyu is from the orthodox school of the mystic door, and his mana is vaguely at the art of primordial innate deity. He's even before I learned the orthodox school of the three clear ones. He cultivates the primordial narcissus and fire mortals, and is free and unfettered. He isn't summoned by the celestial ruler of the upper realm. It's a great fortune for you to be fated with him. Chen Ong shook his head and smiled. The heavens change early. Cultivating this kind of primordial dharma is full of tribulations, and it's difficult to get started. It's really hard to have a good ending. It's fine if I'm a reincarnated body. If they join my sect, I'll be harming them instead. Besides, it's the right way for cultivators to be fated to be apprenticed to learn Tao. Didn't the short Zhu Mei also become apprentice to the three ancestors of a Mei, Shui Jingzi and the seniors, and later learned Tao under the two elders of Tindu and Mingi? Chapter 462. The Ruan siblings pondered for a moment, then kowtowed to Master Lian Shan, saying, Thank you, Master, for giving us your robes. But we admire the orthodox mystic door and want to achieve enlightenment. Lian Shan cult is a large cult in the sea, with many complicated matters and heavy karma. We are unable to bear the burden. Thank you for your kindness, Master. Master Lian Shan and Chen Ong both had a strange smile on their faces. Without waiting for Lian Shan to say anything, Chen Ong asked, Do you know how grand Lian Shan cult is? Even though it fell apart after Taoist Lian Shan's death, it is still a large cult with many immortals and great power. Moreover, Taoist Lian Shan did not appoint a cult master, so the current cult master is not convincing. If you go with Taoist Lian Shan's robes, everyone will respect you and worship you as the cult master. The Ruan siblings shook their heads and refused. Chen Ong and Chen Ong burst out laughing. Chen Ong put away the golden boat and created 3 cloud beds. He invited them to sit and said, You think Master Lian Shan is from a different sect and became the cult master of a different sect. That is absurd. Taoist Lian Shan was one of the 3 ancestors of a Mei, the martial uncle of Long Brao Jinren. Together with the other 2, Shui, Jingzi, and Huasanzi, they established Aimei's orthodoxy. Later, Taoist Lianshan could not bear to see the other sects end up without results, so he sacrificed himself for the other sects and rogue immortals in the world, so that they could achieve enlightenment. That was why he became the cult master of Lianshan cult. In the end, he was burdened by this and died in the sea of fire. Master Lianshan nodded in the wall. Since you were enlightened by Qin Daoyu, why would I ruin your future? Even though I broke away from the sect, I still have relations with Aimei, and they still recognize me as their grandmaster. Qin Daoyu was from a distant ancient orthodoxy, so he did not accept you as his disciples. But as cultivators, we learn from all over the world. So why would we have any sectarian bias? I couldn't stand the fact that the mystic door had so many righteous people guarding the door, refusing to help the masses. That's why I broke through the door. That's why all of you should imitate your predecessors and worship Qin Daoyu as your master first. After you've learned a lot of skills from him, come and worship me. I'll teach you the 9 heavens mysterious script, and then I'll teach you the Aimei orthodoxy. The siblings of the Yuan family were overjoyed when they heard this. They first kowtowed to Qinong and said, "Greetings, master!" Qinong pointed at them, and 3 golden flowers landed on their hands. They transformed into 2 jade books and 1 golden book. He smiled and said, "I haven't imparted my true teachings yet. Just follow the ancient custom and call me teacher." Among these 3 heavenly tomes, one of them is the One Sky Water True Form Diagram that records the secret manual of the water technique. It contains the wonders of 7 types of innate true water, but it can't be used to cultivate the celestial river Dharma power of the primordial Narcissus. It can be considered as a copy of my basic cultivation technique. The other one is the orthodoxy of Baiyang Jinren from the White Sun Cliff of the Wind Cave Mountain. It's best to use it as a beginner. It's called the White Sun Illustration. There are many diagrams in it, and you must cultivate them without missing a single one. The last one is my notes on alchemy, swordsmanship, and many magical weapons. In the future, you'll need it to protect yourselves when you travel the world. After Qinong finished, he said seriously, "But there's one thing I need to make clear to all of you." The siblings of the Yuan family kowtowed and said, "Please enlighten us, master." The heavenly tomes have karma. The White Sun Illustration is the orthodoxy of Baiyang Jinren. Although he left it for those who are fated to learn it, you can't just teach it to them. To cultivate the methods in it, you need to swear to accumulate 50,000 external skills for Baiyang Jinren. As for my orthodoxy, although it doesn't need external skills, and the primordial bloodline doesn't care about this, it's related to the fate of heaven and earth. It's fine during normal times, but if the heavens want to kill you and flood the world, you'll easily fall into karma. You'll control the 7 types of innate true water to destroy the world. At that time, you'll be fighting against the Great You. There'll be people holding the treasures left behind by Great You to kill you. It's fine if you're my direct disciple. You don't have to feel guilty about such a duty. But you're just disciples in name and haven't cultivated the Milky Way Dharma power. You can only stay in the 4 seas and don't go into the Great Tribulation. As for this karma, you'll have to suppress the 4 seas, to pay it back. Lianshan gave you the 9 heavens mystic scripture, and you'll have to promise 10,000 external skills to pay it back. You'll also have to bear the karma of Aimei. Of course, at that time, the Lianshan order will have nothing to do with you. You're disciples from other branches of Aimei. When you see the Lianshan order, you don't need to care about the incense. After Qinong finished, he nodded and signaled to Master Lianshan. Master Lianshan called them over and gave them many instructions. Finally, he left the 9 heavens mystic scripture and listened to the siblings swear to repay Baiyang Jinren and Guang Qingzi a lot of external skills. At this moment, Master Lianshan realized that the separation and reunion 5 cloud tablet had suddenly severed its karma with Qinong. He knew that Qinong wouldn't accept such a treasure, so he could only smile bitterly and shake his head. He used his primordial spirit to calculate and knew Chinang's plan. He smiled bitterly and said, "Chun Daoyu, why did you use me to block the disaster?" Chinang bowed to him and thanked him. "This is for mutual benefit. It's fine if the heavenly Tao forces me to open the eye of the sea. They schemed against me to open the great tribulation. How can I be willing? I have no choice but to ask you to help me with this. After we open the eye of the sea, those peerless experts in the human world can only be counted on you. You can also use the fate of the eye of the sea to change the tribulation after 300 years and have the chance to become a celestial." Master Lianshan shook his head and sighed. "You won't even let go of this remnant soul of mine. What can I do? Fortunately, the matter of the North Pole of creation has a lot of fate energy. It can offset the evil karma created by the Lianshan order. I can sit in the eye of the sea for 300 years in exchange for a chance to cultivate again. I can still do this business with you." He then said to the Ruan siblings who were silently comprehending the illustration of White Sun, "You guys cultivate here. No matter how big the commotion outside is, don't move. There's my restrictive spell and Chun Daoyo's secret protection here. There won't be any danger. If you go out without permission, you'll die in vain." The two of them came to the sea of the Moon Island. Chunong released the one sky water banner and waved out a stream of water from his sleeve. He activated the Yellow River of 9 Bends formation and started to connect the eye of the sea underground, surrounding the Moon Island. Suddenly, the 4 seas unleashed their power. The surrounding whales and Kuin fled in a hurry. Not long after, waves rose from the sea, threatening to tear the entire Moon Island apart. The Yellow River of 9 Bends formation connected the eye of the sea, causing a huge change in the Earth's crust. The underground fire had already been ignited. Thick smoke shot out from the mouth of the fire on the Moon Island, shooting straight into the sky and turning half the sky fiery red. Furious roars could be heard. The fire hole immediately increased in size. The ground near it immediately melted and became boiling lava. The boiling lava was like a waterfall, spraying in all directions. It reflected the light of the fire and gave off a sparkling splendor. It was a magnificent sight. Master Lianshan sat on the Moon Island, activating all the restrictive spells he laid down. He tried his best to restrain the explosion of the underground fire, preventing it from colliding with the slowly rising ocean. At this moment, the unorthodox sects who were alarmed by the commotion rushed over from all directions. One of them, Wang Gang, who was from the desolate Flow Reef Cave, saw a trace of Chinong through the changes in the formation. He shouted, "Where did this kid come from? How dare he spy on Master Lianshan's hidden treasure?" He then encouraged many others who had evil intentions like him to attack the formation and seize the Lianshan's hidden treasure that Chinong had obtained. Chinong only smiled coldly. He launched all 12 primordial waterscape swords, cutting all the unorthodox demons who dared to make a move into 2. Even their primordial spirits couldn't escape. They were considered as 3 animals sacrificed to the eye of the sea. As expected, after this calamity, the earth shook and the mountains shook. As the sea surface near the Moon Island was shattered, an enormous eye of the sea broke free from the Earth's crust and swallowed the entire Moon Island. Chapter 463. Chunong used the 9 Bends Yellow River Formation to draw upon the power of the Eye of the Sea, sinking Yu Air Island into the Eye of the Sea. Just like Purple Cloud Palace, it sank into the Earth's crust. Meanwhile, Master Lianshan suppressed Yu Air Island, preventing it from being destroyed by the Eye of the Sea. Without this fire vein, the power of creation of the Eye of the Sea would be reduced by at least half. The two worked together to create a blessed land under the sea. Using water to fight fire, not only did they calm the sea of fire on Yu Air Island, they also warmed the ocean currents within thousands of miles. Because of the Eye of the seawater here was continuously sent to various places in the North Pole Sea, forming a warm and comfortable current. This also prevented the evil of the sea of fish and beasts in the sea from dying, because the seawater was kept in the fire vein for a long time and boiled. The rogue cultivators nearby saw Yu-Er Island sinking to the bottom of the sea, then looked at Chinong, who was floating on the surface of the sea with fear in their eyes. The Luopa Caves, Lude Silkworm, Wangang, and the group of rogue cultivators who had died all reminded them of the danger of Chinong. Thus, these rogue cultivators scattered like birds and beasts, far away from this great calamity. Chin-Ong shrunk the golden ship of creation to about 30 feet in size, then landed on the ship and escaped to the bottom of the sea. Endless cold seawater gushed out from the eye of the sea. Under the dark surface of the sea, there was only a little bit of dark red like the glow of ashes. Chinong saw that it was the red glow of Yu-Er Island's volcano at the bottom of the sea. As the North Pole sea surged, it was in imminent danger. Its color grew dimmer and dimmer, as if it was about to be extinguished. As Chinong used the Nine Bends Yellow River Formation to restrain the seawater, he urged the golden ship of creation to transform into a golden rainbow and escape to Yu-Er Island. At this moment, most of the island was drenched by the cold current, leaving only a little bit of warmth. Master Lianshan used his earth fire to resist the cold current of the North Pole Sea. Seeing Chinong, he nodded and sighed, "Because I wanted to eliminate the fire calamity of Yu-Er Island, I have already leaked poisonous underground fire several times. Now, the fire of Yu-Er Island's volcano is not enough to resist the cold current, so I need your help." Chin-Ong smiled faintly and said, "That's not a problem. Even when the Moonchild Island's volcano was at its peak, it couldn't withstand the erosion of the North Pole seawater for 10,000 years. I still need to use the golden ship of creation to penetrate the underground fire vein and trigger the earth lung poison fire to solve this once and for all. With how strong the geocentric fire is, it won't be extinguished by the North Pole seawater for tens of thousands of years." Then he called the Wan siblings over and said, "I'm going to drill through the Earth's veins and activate the underground fire. Star Lianshan to protect the Sea of Pole Sea area. Dragon Yuli, Sea of Pole Dragon. You should also experience the might of the subterranean extreme fire so that you don't revere the heavenly Tao in the future and become arrogant." The brother and sister of the Wan family were naturally willing. Chin-Ong sent them into the belly of the golden ship. He stood at the bow of the ship and let out a long whistle. He dove into the fire cave of the Moonchild Island. The golden ship separated the underground lava and traveled down along the fire vein. The fire wings of Xian-Yin poison fire were boiling in the fire sea. The fire wings were white and red, and they seemed to be able to melt the golden ship. However, the fire wings of Sun God on the golden ship of creation opened and changed. The fire wings of Sun grew 1,000 feet and swallowed the fire that was threatening the golden ship. Most of the fire was turned into red talismans to refine the fire wings of Sun God. A small part of the fire was turned into power to double the speed of the fire wings of Sun God. In the blink of an eye, the golden ship of creation went into the depth of the earth vein. The fire vein was cut off at this point. Only a streak of earth fire Yin evil chi separated the earth lung and the 10,000 feet fire vein, protecting the world above the earth's crust from being invaded by the Tai fire. Chin-Ong wanted to create a path through this and guide the power of the earth lung dark Yin poison fire to the surface. Only the power of heaven and earth could warm the 10,000 miles of ocean in the North Pole and create a blessed land in the middle of the extreme pole. This earth fire Yin Chi is born with the ability to restrain the earth lung grand fire. Don't be fooled by its appearance as a red mist. Inside, it can melt metal and corrode fire. No matter how powerful a restriction magic treasure is, once it is enveloped by it, it can melt into molten iron. Chin-Ong explained to the brother and sister of the Wan family. Besides, it is responsible for resisting the earth fire and protecting the earth's crust. No matter how powerful your supernatural power is, you can't touch it. Chen Ong originally thought that the fire vein would be protected by the earth fire copper vein, the Zhurong Blood Sea, or the Baifeng Divine Jade Mountain. In that case, he could only use the Yin-Yang magnetic thunder cannon on the golden ship of creation to open a passage, and then use magic treasure to suppress it. Now it seemed that it was not necessary. Chen Ong let the brother and sister of the Ruan family temporarily take charge of the golden ship of creation for him. He shouted in a low voice and faintly connected with the formation of 9 bends, Yellow River, thousands of miles above his head. A white rainbow flew out from his dantian. This white rainbow was composed of countless talismans, which was formed by the essence of Chen Ang's Milky Way Dharma power. Because water and fire restrained each other, Chen Ong could only show a part of the Milky Way Dharma power that was beyond the nature of water. This white rainbow flew out and immediately attracted the earth fire, evil, Yin poison fire. When the two sides came into contact, not only did it not cause a violent change, but it merged with it. Countless small talismans stuck to it like young swallows flying to the forest. They absorbed the earth fire red mist and transformed it into a formation map. They entered the earth fire evil Yin poison fire and began to absorb the evil chi. Countless red talismans were spewed out and refined into the formation map, thickening the essence of the formation map. Chen Ong silently operated his primordial spirit and sat at the bow of the ship. He tried his best to understand the essence of the earth fire evil Yin poison fire and deduce the formation map. This was not like the formation of 9 bends Yellow River, which had a deep accumulation of the way of true water, whether it was the way of true fire or the evil chi of earth. Chen Ong could only be considered to have a slight understanding of them. He was not proficient in them, so there were many difficulties in deducing them. The gradually expanding formation map was also repelled by the earth fire evil Yin poison fire a few times. The talismans that formed the prohibition were scattered and on the verge of collapse. Fortunately, Chen Ong was not alone. His primordial spirit was constantly communicating with Master Lianshan to control the formation of 9 bends, Yellow River. Master Lianshan was an expert in the art of fire and was familiar with the nature of fire. He taught Chen Ong everything he knew. With his experience, not only did the formation of 9 bends, Yellow River gain a few more changes, but the formation map that was constantly growing in the evil Yin poison fire also gradually stabilized and continued to evolve exquisitely. After 3 months, the formation map had already devoured 80% of the earth fire evil Yin poison fire. It faintly formed a blurry shadow. Chen Ong also used the boundless nature of fire to refine a few transcendent treasures and primordial embryos. He also refined the lump of metal he prepared for Qing a few times and refined it into 81 earth fire prime needles. These needles were specialized in breaking prohibitions and the evil Yin poison fire, as well as the true chi of the transcendent treasures that cultivators used to protect themselves. There were still dozens of days until the Dragon Boat Festival. Chen Ong transformed the earth fire prime needles into a long rainbow and flew away. He also took the opportunity to tell Qing that he was trapped in the earth fire and could not help her. On the day of the Dragon Boat Festival, Chen Ong knew that Qing, or his tribulation, had begun. With the help of his earth fire prime needles, Qing, was trapped in the prohibition. She still had to endure 10 more years of tempering before she would have the chance to escape. At this time, the chi of heaven and earth was of the utmost yang. It swept away the evil and poisonous things. Many evil, Yin poison fire, and bad luck temporarily lay dormant. Chapter 464. The boundless Taihua carried the power to burn the world as it rushed up along the underground fire vein. Molten lava wrapped around the precious minerals underground. The surging, rich mineral veins were about to block the fire cave. When the Taihua rushed up to the surface, the passage would be blocked and the force would not be able to pour out. The North Pole would probably collapse, and the unprecedented earthquake would destroy billions of lives. In the face of such terror, Chen Ang's expression was calm. He activated the golden ship under him and the two fire wings of the sun god flapped hard. The golden ship of fate suddenly returned to its size of 1,000 feet, flying in front of the Taihua. The accumulated gold and iron, as well as the treasures of heaven and earth, were all swallowed by the golden ship. The impurities in the fire vein that couldn't be melted were crushed by the golden ship he was driving. From time to time, the divine thunder cannon would explode and expand the fire vein by several times, reducing the tremendous impact force to some extent. When it reached the entrance of the Moon Island's fire cave, the golden ship turned into a beam of light and stopped. Under the activation of Chun Ang's mana, it suddenly pressed down. The entire Moon Island was melted into a ball of boiling lava. The Yellow River Formation of 9 bends unleashed 90% of its power, gathering the qi of water essence from the North Pole and the Xianming true water that had been refined for months. The coldness of the Xianming true water and the burning of the underground Taihua were guarded by the golden ship of fate. Under the full control of Qin Ong and Master Lianshan, the water and fire complemented each other and turned into a qi of vitality that could nourish all lives. It slowly spread out. The Yellow River Formation of 9 bends formlessly intercepted it. The entire formation changed and expanded several times, enveloping 1,000 miles of the sea. The ancient cold air of the North Pole gathered from all directions and was refined by the Yellow River Formation of 9 bends, turning into Xianming true water. A portion was used to fuel the Taihua, and another portion was used to perfect the formation. After the Tianyi true water, one of the 7 innate true waters was perfected, doubling the formation's power. On the other hand, the Moon Island at the bottom of the sea had borrowed a large amount of lava that was brought up from underground by the Taihua, causing its volume to increase by 10 times. Its entire body had even borrowed the power of fire and water to temper itself into a huge piece of warm jade. It was crystal clear, warm, and adorable like the fat of sheep. The warm jade at the very center had all turned into by Fong fire jade. It could be said to be another 9 earth spirit abode that was not inferior to the Purple Cloud Palace. Chun Ong had gained a lot this time. Not only had he accepted the overseas celestial abode that even Lingqiao and Mount Mei coveted, but he had also used his good deeds of opening up the spiritual land in the North Pole and creating countless living beings to extend his own fate energy. He had also united the 4 seas and opened up another branch of the overseas world. He had cleverly transferred all these to Great Master Lianshan. Previously, when he was refining the golden ship of Moon Island, the countless metals and materials that he had excavated from the sea were erased by the heavenly axiom. Taking advantage of the opportunity of the rising lava from underground, his golden ship of creation had collected countless precious materials, including real gold and divine gold. One must know that the mineral concentration in the core of Mount Shu was a few hundred times higher than the surface of the earth. It had not been excavated by the cultivators of the world yet. At this moment, all the metals and minerals that Chun Ong had were enough to supply the needs of several large sects for 10,000 years. Moreover, he did not have any innate karma, so he did not owe the heaven and earth. This was the embodiment of Qin Ang's Tao of creation. It had deeply illustrated the Tao of heaven and earth of the creation of the heavenly axiom, I will benefit from it. Speaking of which, Qin Ang's mining of minerals and smelting metals was a few 100,000 times better than other cultivators. However, the unorthodox cultivators would be entangled with karma whenever they stole a little from the heaven and earth. In the future, they would face retribution. Chun Ong was very powerful, but his fate energy was long, and his good fortune would benefit the 9 generations. Chun Ong had collected treasures of heaven and earth for a total of 3 times. The first time was when he transformed into a crane and refined countless elixirs and miraculous medicines. However, he only benefited a little from it. The second time was when he sacrificed at the Purple Cloud Palace to cultivate the Yellow River of 9 Tunes Formation and mine minerals. However, he integrated them into the Sea Eye of Creation and did not get involved in karma. This time he even took advantage of the opening of the sea eye to fish out as much as he could, which increased his fate energy. The wonders of creation could be seen clearly. After a few days, the newly formed Moon Island blessed land had stabilized. As long as there was no disruption from external forces, the arrangement of water and fire complementing each other and thousands of miles of good fortune would stabilize in a few decades. By then, no one would be able to detonate the power of the Sea Eye's fire vein. Only then did Master Lianshan's remnant soul slowly emerge from the heart of the Moon Island's Jade Mountain. Compared to the power that suppressed the earth fire previously, Master Lianshan's soul was ethereal, as if it could be blown away by the wind. However, in Chen Ang's eyes, his condition was unprecedentedly good. Previously, his primordial spirit was strong but lethargic, as if the sun had set in the west. Now it was weak and illusory, but full of vigor, like a newly sprouted seedling. Master Lianshan cupped his hands and said, "Thank you, Qin Daoyu, for saving me. Now I no longer need to reincarnate. After cultivating for 300 years, my primordial spirit will be able to recover to its former state. It might even go one step further and become a divine immortal." Qinong knew that he had more to say, so he calmly returned the greeting. As expected, Master Lianshan sighed and said, "But you schemed against me again. You transferred the fate of the Purple Cloud Palace to me. Amei and I are of the same breath. With this, the Purple Cloud Palace will definitely return to my hands after 300 years. Seizing the good fate of the younger generation really makes me feel ashamed." Qinong smiled and said, "Fellow Taoist, why are you ashamed? This is a good thing for both Amei and you. Now, with the fortune of the 4 seas and the protection of the Purple Cloud Palace, there is a possibility that the great wish that you made in the past can be realized. Opening another branch of Amei overseas and enlightening the unorthodox sects will be the right result. Compared to the previous plan of the Amei Mansion, it will be more able to develop the orthodoxy and prosper Amei. But this was originally your fate. It should have been you, Chen Daoyu, who established the orthodoxy of the 4 seas. After ascending from Amei, you should have established another leader of the righteous path. Now, with me blocking the disaster, you can be free and unfettered, while I have to train in the human world for 1,000 years to continue the orthodoxy of Amei," Master Lianshan said with a bitter smile. Qinong pretended not to hear the meaning in Lianshan's words. He laughed and said, "As the leader of Amei for 1,000 years, how can you retreat just because of one day? The orthodoxy of heaven and earth and the fate of the righteous path still need to be borne by you. I am just a free and unfettered person. How can I bear such a heavy responsibility? I have a poem here for you, Lianshan and fellow Amei friends, to benefit the human world. The heavenly Tao has decreed that you can also be transferred to me. I am convinced. Go and lie dormant for 300 years. Wait for the day after tomorrow to face the disaster of the conflict between heaven and man." Master Lianshan interrupted Qinong helplessly. He went into the depths of Yu, our island, and opened up a cave to cultivate. Qinong shook his head and smiled. He knew that Master Lianshan was angry because he had been schemed against. However, such emotions were no longer able to deceive the vital spirit of cultivators of their level. After his anger subsided, he still had to owe Qinong a favor. After all, Qinong had given him this opportunity, which also gave Lianshan the possibility of realizing his great wish in the past. There was no need for him to painstakingly leave behind countless treasures, secret treasures, and tomes of heaven to transfer karma. He called the Ruan siblings over and said, "Now that our island is hidden deep in the eye of the sea, although it can be illuminated by the sun and moon, it is still barren. I have left behind a portion of the spiritual herbs and rare treasures in the Purple Cloud Palace. You can cultivate them carefully and decorate this jade island. Although the entire body of jade is not ugly, I love plants and flowers the most, so it will be good to decorate it in a unique way. There is the suppression of the Earth Fiend Heavenly Gate 3,000 miles underground here, and I have also left behind the Yellow River of Nine Bends Formation to protect it. With the two formations linked together, it is extremely safe and no one can sneak in. I can rest assured that you can cultivate in seclusion here. It is just that when I open the mansion, although I have killed many of the unorthodox schools to establish my might, the calamity has not ended yet. When you are transplanting spiritual herbs and rare plants in the nearby sea, there will be many twists and turns, and you will need treasures to protect yourself. Chin Ong pointed with his right finger, and two rays of light, one blue and one purple, entered the hands of the siblings. One turned into a pair of crystal-like scissors, and the other turned into a flying awl. He said, "This sea-splitting scissors and sea-breaking awl shall be bestowed to you to protect yourselves." When the two of them saw it, they could feel the power contained in it. It looked cute, and they liked it very much. In the end, Chen Ong instructed, because the lava of the underground fire vein is constantly replenished, the surrounding earth veins are constantly being enriched, and there are countless mineral veins and rare treasures being born. Our island is endlessly lucky, and we can use them to refine treasures. It is the heaven and earth's reward for me. As long as you do not overharvest and cut off the mineral veins, you can take as much as you want. Choose one of the few flying swords recorded in the sword refining method that I have left for you, and consider it as a lesson for you. He then waved his sleeves and said, "Go! I still have things to do, and I will leave in a month." He then ignored the two of them and turned into a long rainbow, merging with the Yellow River of Nine Bends Formation. He borrowed the power of the formation to refine the Xianming real water and cultivate the celestial river mana. After this encounter, there was still some Xianming real water left in the formation, and with the North Pole's cold air constantly replenishing it, Chinong only took a month to cultivate the celestial river mana of the Xianming real water to a small success. The mana turned into a glacier river that could freeze the heaven and earth, and he left a part of the Yellow River of Nine Bends Formation to suppress it. He then sat on the golden ship, triggered the heavenly star shifting, and fled to the East Sea. Chapter 465. The heavenly star escape technique used the eternally unchanging stars that hung between the two worlds as a guide, allowing one to travel thousands of miles in an instant. It was the first escape technique that Chun Ong had comprehended after comprehending the Milky Way star sea. It was not much slower than the Buddhist heart escape technique or the mystic door light escape technique, but it used the stars to determine one's position. It was a little more rigid and could only be used to travel, not to fight and pursue enemies. However, this escape technique had an advantage that no other technique had. If one had a flying magic treasure that could withstand the huge pressure of the immemorial stars suppressing the void, one could break through the layer of astral wind and travel between the stars beyond the heavens. This was a mystery that no matter how high one's heart escape technique was, it was not possible. Chin Ong had forged the magnetic golden ship of good fortune for this reason. With the golden ship, he could travel a distance that would take ordinary cultivators 100 years to fly on their swords and travel between the heavens. Among the 7 types of true waters, there were 3 types: the Milky Way weak water, the first Yuan heavy water, and the Time Light true water, that were abundant in the stars beyond the heavens. Therefore, this trip was a must for Chinong. The trip to the stars beyond the heavens was a plan for the future. At present, the golden ship sailed on the East Sea, sometimes diving underwater and sometimes sailing on the sea. The ship was not disturbed by the wind and rain, and no matter how strong the waves were, they could not get within 3 feet of the golden ship. Not only was the journey extremely fast, but they could also enjoy the magnificent scenery of the sea, which was more carefree than flying on their swords. Shushan was millions of times the size of Earth, and there were even more people in the sea. Countless small islands were scattered across the ocean, and there were many islands larger than Earth's Greenland. Many of them had formed their own continents, but they were not as prosperous as the divine Central Plains. These were the sea countries that the great Ming people talked about. In Jinling City, Chinong had heard that there were Yanlong, Sio by Min, Heichi, Niuli, and many others. Each sea country occupied one or several islands and had many products that the Central Plains did not have. They were the overseas barbarians that the people of the Central Plains called overseas and paid tribute to the great Ming dynasty every year. The sea area that Chinong had been to before was occupied by many sea beasts and flood dragons. There were also many storms and huge waves. Chinong had seen huge waves that were dozens of feet high. It couldn't do anything to the golden ship of fate, but if an ordinary ship went there, it would be torn into pieces by the waves. There were also poisonous dragons and evil flood dragons, giant kuin, and sea loaches. If an ordinary sea country were to establish a country there, the entire population of the country would be devoured by these evil beasts in a few years. Therefore, the population was sparse. Even if there were one or two of them, they were also protected by the overseas loose immortals. They lived around the immortal islands where the loose immortals lived and depended on the cultivators. Only places where the sea beasts and poisonous dragons were eliminated by the ocean currents could have the possibility of survival for a system like the sea country. There were many merchant ships here, and the sails were like the clouds. Fleets of ships came and went from all over the world. There were also many families and nobles from the Central Plains who came here to occupy a few big islands and establish their own businesses. The golden ship that Chinong was riding on was rather eye-catching. Fortunately, the traveling merchants here were experienced and knowledgeable. Some of them even domesticated huge sea beasts to pull the ship. Others only saw Chinong's ship as something that looked like it was pasted with a layer of copper foil. They didn't think that it was a big ship made of metal. Moreover, Chinong had the intention to keep a low profile. After withdrawing the golden light of the golden ship, it looked a little dim. It didn't look as bright as before, as if it was cast by the sun. As Chinong slowed down the speed of the ship, a small boat approached from the channel. Someone on the boat shouted, "Is the owner here? What specialties do you have on this ship?" "Our Fuhai Merchant Union has been in this sea area for dozens of years and has a good reputation. We also have many special products of the sea country. You can take a look." Seeing that Chinong didn't answer, the person asked again in several languages. These sea merchants are smart. There are even people who took the initiative to come here to inquire. It seems that the competition here is intense, and the business here is much more prosperous than the great Ming dynasty. Hearing that the person spoke with a Minnan accent, he thought, "He's also a citizen of the great Ming dynasty? If I'm in the South China Sea, will I hear a Chaos Han accent?" Wanting to take a look at the situation of the citizens of the great Ming dynasty, Chinong pointed, and a rope was released from the golden ship. The person knew what he meant. Although it was strange that no one came to greet him, this was the most important part of the trade route. No pirates dared to do business here. Therefore, he was very reassured and climbed onto the bow of the ship. The person was a dark and skinny little man. When he came up, he only saw Chinong alone. His feet didn't seem to be stepping on copper foil, so he was secretly shocked. The person cupped his hands and chuckled. "Pardon me for disturbing you. May I ask what goods have you brought since this is your first time here?" "Our Fuhai Merchant Union is the #1 merchant union here. We have goods from all over the world. Great Ming Dynasty's silk, tea leaves, rhubarb, porcelain, fine iron, Heichi's gold, silver, treasured sabers, spices, and pearls from the South China Sea. No matter what you want, we can provide it." Chinong frowned and said, "I haven't introduced myself. How do you know that this is my first time here?" The person smiled and didn't look proud. Instead, he answered naturally, "Our Fuhai Merchant Union has been here for dozens of years. I remember all the merchants and ships that have come and gone, but there isn't a single distinguished customer here." Chun Ong counted the number of people he had seen along the way and couldn't help but praise. There are probably tens of thousands of merchant ships that come and go here every year. Who knows how many in the past few decades? It's really amazing that your merchant union has a talent like you. The person still said calmly, "If it wasn't for this, my owner wouldn't have been able to take root here for dozens of years and chase away many of the merchant unions here. Only we, the people of the great Ming dynasty, have this kind of background. The other sea countries are like beasts in human clothing. They drink blood and eat fur. I'm afraid that they haven't turned into humans for a long time and don't have proper etiquette. If you do business with them, it would really be a disgrace to your identity." He said this with confidence, and his tone sounded like it was only right and proper. Chin Ong pondered for a moment and said slowly, "But I'm here to do business with the great Ming dynasty's merchant union. This place is very close to the great Ming dynasty's territory. I've already come here for tens of thousands of miles of sea. Why would I mind this little bit of distance?" When the person heard tens of thousands of miles of sea, his right eyelid twitched and knew that he had caught a big fish. He immediately shouted, "Do you have any letters of credence from the overseas countries?" Chun Ong pretended to frown and said, "Why do you need a letter of credence?" The person chuckled and said proudly, "Honored guest doesn't know that the great Ming dynasty has closed its country and doesn't accept foreign merchants. Unless the great Ming dynasty has a letter of credence from the various countries saying that they are coming to pay tribute, the imperial court will not reward you. As for the merchant union, they only do business with the great Ming's vassal states, and their profits are very heavy. I'm afraid it will be difficult for honored guests to go there. With my wealth, it won't be difficult to bribe the great Ming's vassal states and sneak in. The merchant union's profits are very heavy. If you add another layer, wouldn't it be stupid for me to follow?" Chinong asked in reply. The person laughed and said calmly, "Honored guest may not know, but our merchant union is very strong and has opened up the joints of the imperial court. We have the title of Zhenma country. I'm not talented, but I'm a minister of Zhenma country. Our president is the king of Zhenma country and can pay tribute twice a year. It's much cheaper than the merchant union. Honored guest, doing business with us is better than doing business with the great Ming dynasty." Chun Ong sneered in his heart and thought, "You're going to pay tribute? I'm afraid it's more like smuggling. No wonder the great Ming's overseas trade is so prosperous, but the imperial court's treasury is empty. As a result, the northwest bandits couldn't be pacified and the northeast bandits couldn't resist. This Fuhai merchant union is very strong. I'm afraid the entire Jiangnan is in cahoots with them, and the rich and powerful families have earned a lot. When the Tartars invade south, these idiots will destroy their families and families." Thinking of this, the good impression he had disappeared. He clapped his hands, and the door of the pavilion behind him opened. Countless coral jewels, hawksbill pearls, exotic flowers and herbs, even the skin of sea beasts, the fragrance of ambergris, fine iron, gold, and jade filled the entire pavilion. There were cat's-eyed gems the size of baskets, thumb-sized sea beads, and 9 feet tall red corals. The person's eyeballs were about to sink in. The person was so excited that his whole body was trembling, almost going crazy. These were all harvests from Chin Ang's Purple Cloud Palace, Moon or Island, and even the Sea Voyage. They were used to decorate the Immortal's Cave. To Chinong they were like dung. He moved some from the golden ship of fortune and piled them here, tempting the person. Almost as if he was robbing, the person stuffed an exquisite booklet into Chunang's arms and said, "These are the goods of our merchant union. Is there anything that you like?" Chin Ong flipped through it and sneered. "These things can be used to fool ordinary people. I'm so rich that I can rival a country, so why would I care about them? If you can't take out anything better, I'll let this matter go." The person's head was covered in cold sweat. His previous calmness was completely gone. There was only one thought in his mind, to make this rich customer stay. "Is there anything that you like?" Even if our merchant union doesn't have it now, we can send it to you within a month. The goods here are all used to do business with the barbarians. It's a bit rude to use them to receive a guest, but we are powerful in Middle-earth, so we can find anything. I admire the culture of Middle-earth. Northern Song Dynasty's Ru Kiln, Ding Kiln's official porcelain, famous calligraphies and paintings, ancient Shang and Zhou bronze wares, Han bronze wares, Tang gold and silver wares. Other than that, I don't like any silk, tea, or porcelain you make yourself. Chen Ong pretended to be extravagant, and his words were very magnanimous. The person calculated in his heart. These things are all limited. No matter how powerful the merchant union is, it can't earn 1/10 of the treasures in his warehouse. I have to think of a way to get more. He then asked, since you admire the culture of Middle-earth, why don't you buy a group of people from Middle-earth to serve you? How can foreign countries compare to the literate beauties of Middle-earth? Chen Ong said loudly, You dare to sell people? He then waved his hand and said, I've heard of the moral culture of Middle-earth. How can there be such shameless behavior? Shut up. The dark and skinny merchant was stunned. And you're a Confucian, gentleman. He quickly changed his words. How is this a business? We're just hiring people to serve us. We also have all kinds of exotic treasures from overseas, spices from Sinnu and Semboja. Do you have Yu Ling? Chen Ong interrupted him and asked, The Merfolk Sea Nation has always been closed off, and we don't have many in stock. The person thought for a moment, and his eyes suddenly lit up. He thought, Isn't it better to sell exotic treasures than to sell gambling? If I can pique the interest of this rich guest, wouldn't it be easy to get as many treasures as I want? There was indeed a rare commodity in his information. He quickly said, Do you know that this year the king of the Merfolk Great Cheong Sea Nation is holding a grand son-in-law selection ceremony to welcome countless distinguished guests from the sea? Not only will there be countless exotic treasures and products of the Merfolk to sell, but you can also win the hearts of the Merfolk princesses and become the son-in-law of the king of the Merfolk Sea Nation. I happen to have an invitation to this ceremony. Chapter 466. The capital of the De Cheong Sea Kingdom was located in a bay surrounded by countless rocks and reefs. The wind and waves here were very strong, and the reefs split the waves, creating countless undercurrents and whirlpools. There were also hidden reefs, and the big and small waterways were interconnected, making it difficult for people who were not mermaids to travel. Sea snakes, dragon whales, walruses, and other evil beasts lived here, making it a nightmare for ships. Although the Merfolk could hide in the deep sea and were even more secretive, the Merfolk just happened to be amphibious. Just like seals and walruses, they liked to frolic on the reefs. Moreover, the deep-sea poisonous dragons devoured the Merfolk's people. Only in this kind of complicated and narrow waterway could they better protect themselves. The previous monarch also spent a lot of effort to find such a place. Chen Ong rowed the golden ship of fate and came to the front of the barren reef. He saw that there was a slightly flat area in the northwest corner that was already open to merchants. Many merchant ships were docked there, occupying the barren reef and building pavilions to sell their goods to the passing ships. Chen Ong did not care about this, and only activated the talisman that he had left for his disciple. Not long after, a sea loach swam out of the reef waterway and stopped in front of him. Third Princess Ling Sha came out from the belly of the sea loach, and when she saw Chen Ong, she said happily, Master, you have returned from the Moon Island. I am sorry that I could not welcome you. I have ordered people to prepare a banquet in the courtyard to welcome you. Many of the third princess's arrogant habits had not been washed away. If it was not for the fact that Chen Ong saw that she had rich Gui water essential qi and knew how to work hard, he would have already scolded her. Cultivators had the most time, but also the most urgent. If they indulged themselves and enjoyed themselves, they would naturally have 10 times the time of ordinary people to enjoy themselves. If they were to seek enlightenment, they would quietly cultivate every day and their time would be even more urgent than ordinary people. How would they have the time to attend the banquet? Did they really think that the 500-year tribulation of the mortals was a small matter? After thinking about this, Chenong let her come up. Princess Ling Sha wanted to open the way for him, but she did not expect the golden ship to turn into a beam of light and go straight to her palace after making many turns in the waterway. The speed of the ship was extremely fast. In just a blink of an eye, it had stopped in the middle of the courtyard. When the maids and guards from all directions saw it, they all surrounded it. Princess Ling Sha could only stand on the boat and berate them a few times before respectfully inviting Chenong in. She was just a princess of the Sea Nation, but she already had the grandeur of a great Ming marquis on land. She had a pearl palace that was luxurious and luxurious. Even the emperor of the great Ming dynasty would not dare to build such a thing in his harem. However, the emperor of the great Ming was very poor. Most likely Emperor Chongzhen was not even willing to eat right now, so there was no point in comparing them. Chenong glanced around and sneered. Your pearl palace is too simple and crude. It's really not worthy of my disciple's identity. Let me put on some makeup for you. After saying that, countless gold, jade, pearls, corals, and gems flew out of his sleeves. They were 100 times more luxurious than before. They piled up in the palace as if they were free. Those who saw it were shocked to the core, and their minds swayed. After finishing, he said to Princess Ling Sha, "Your master has not seen your good friend and sister yet. Go and invite them over." He walked into the Pearl Palace first and sat on the guest seat on the left. With a wave of his right sleeve, countless water droplets fell to the ground and broke into pieces. The water droplets then turned into fairy guards that looked like real people, creating the grandeur of a celestial palace. At first, Princess Ling Sha was in a daze, afraid that Chenong would act up. However, after a long time, he did not berate her, and she calmed down. She found a few good friends and invited the 2 princesses who had a grudge with her. Not long after, the guests arrived. Princess Ling Sha carefully observed Chenong's expression, her good friends, and her old grudge. When she saw the countless treasures piled up in the Pearl Palace, she could not take her eyes off it. She looked left and right, and everywhere she looked, there were all kinds of rare treasures. The maids and guards were tall and beautiful, and the rules were strict. The etiquette was elegant, and the atmosphere was full of power. She tried her best to flatter Princess Ling Sha, and the 2 sisters who had a grudge with her looked at her with jealousy. They wanted to curry favor with her, but they were afraid of losing face. The atmosphere created by Chenong was completely in line with the mentality of the nobles. It was like a fine wine, intoxicating and intoxicating. Princess Ling Sha didn't have much of a resistance. In the beginning, she only knew how to observe Chenong's expression, but as time went on, she became completely engrossed in it. She imitated the methods she learned in the palace and the way the royal family enjoyed their power. She mocked her 2 sisters while enjoying the flattery from the people around her. She was born into a wealthy family and was very familiar with such things. When Chenong saw that she was completely immersed in it, he smiled coldly and suddenly stood up. "Watch me show you a magic trick." Ling Sha came back to her senses. She saw Chenong flicking his fingers, and a huge ball of lightning appeared. He flicked it downwards. The ball of lightning landed on the jade floor, and a strong suction force suddenly appeared. Everything that landed on the floor was crushed into pieces. It smashed the corals, broke the golden palace, smashed the jade, and scattered the pearls. The entire Pearl Palace was reduced to dust in an instant. Ling Sha and the others felt as if their souls had left their bodies, and their hearts were filled with shock. When the noble mermaids saw the fist-sized gemstones, cat's eye, agate, and jadeite being crushed by the lightning ball, they screamed and fainted. After being shocked by them, Ling Sha regained her senses and quickly knelt down in front of Chenong. "Do you know why I said that all the cultivators in the world do not accept royalty as disciples?" Chenong said indifferently with his hands behind his back. The 3rd princess, Ling Sha, trembled and kowtowed. I know I am wrong. I wanted to see how determined you are to be able to cultivate in the palace of riches. Among cultivators, those who can endure humiliation are considered low grade, those who can endure loneliness are middle grade, and those who can endure wealth are considered high grade. I think your temperament is considered high grade. Even if you are surrounded by riches, you will not change your mind. Chen Ong smiled at her, but it made Princess Ling Sha even more afraid. It seems like you don't have the ability to do so. Chen Ong sneered. If you have the heart to leave the mortal world and seek Tao, you should treat riches as floating clouds. Do you know what to do? Chen Ong stood on the wreckage of the Pearl Palace, and his words were very convincing. Princess Ling Sha kowtowed to the ground and did not dare to wipe the blood off her forehead. She said firmly, I know. If Ling Sha was his direct disciple, Chen Ong would not let her go so easily. He would have many tricks up his sleeves, and his methods would not be so crude. However, Ling Sha was just a spare test subject. As long as he did not waste his efforts and let his investment go to waste, it would be fine. He did not care whether Ling Sha would be successful in the future. It was like raising a pig. If a fat pig did not grow meat, it would be taught a lesson. If a pig was lazy and could not grow healthy meat, it was a small matter. Chapter 467. The Pearl Palace was destroyed, and the group of noble ladies from the Merman Kingdom left in a daze, leaving only Chen Ong and Princess Ling Sha in the ruins. Ling Sha was woken up by this, and she no longer dared to act like a member of the royal family. She changed into a simple Taoist robe and got ready to serve Chen Ong. She planned to travel the South Sea with Chen Ong and cultivate in seclusion. She distributed all the items from the Pearl Palace to the maids and people from the Merman Kingdom, telling them to seek protection from Prince Jiaoli. Ever since their last trip to the Purple Cloud Palace, they had been wandering around the Purple Cloud Palace for a few months without any gains. Not only did the two of them form quite a good friendship, but Prince Jiaoli also wandered around the Purple Cloud Palace, picking up many ownerless Dharma treasures and even Taoist books and notes, although they were just unorthodox things left behind by the Purple Cloud Palace disciples that Chen Ong had casually killed. To Prince Jiaoli, they were already very valuable. Now that Prince Jiaoli had cultivated a whole body of unorthodox magic power and had several unorthodox magic treasures with him, he was vaguely the #1 prince of the Merfolk Sea Kingdom. If these mermaids sought shelter under him, their future would be better than Princess Ling Sha's. However, Ling Sha did not mind. She was focused on the Jiguang hand painting that Chen Ong left for her, so she did not have time to worry about other things. Chen Ong saw that although her Taoist heart was clouded, her skills did not deteriorate. That was why he was willing to continue cultivating her. Otherwise, she would just be a one-time test subject. Seeing that she was wholeheartedly refining the frigid cold painting, Chen Ong, who had always been fair in rewards and punishments, gave her some benefits. Chen Ong ordered, "Open up the painting." Ling Sha naturally did not dare to disobey Chen Ong casually dripped 3 drops of Xianming true water onto the cold diagram. A chilling qi instantly thickened the essence of the cold diagram. Ling Sha also felt the true qi from the Xianming true water, and her mana gradually carried a little bit of the true water of Xianming true water that could freeze through the ages and never change. The two of them packed their things and prepared to board the golden ship to escape to the South China Sea. Suddenly, a group of eunuchs from the Merfolk Sea Kingdom rushed over. The Merfolk Sea Kingdom was influenced by the culture of the Middle East. They did not learn anything else, but they learned a lot about the rules of the eunuchs in the palace. The leader of the group was an old eunuch who was probably more than 100 years old. It could be seen that his bad habits ran deep. He bowed deeply to Chen Ong and said, "Immortal Elder, please wait. Our king has heard that the princess's teacher has come to visit, so he has come to invite you. His Majesty has already set up a banquet in the palace and has invited Immortal Elder to join us. When Chen Ong saw the fear on Princess Lingsha's face, he shook his head with a smile and replied, "Fine, let's go see this king. Why did he summon me?" But in his heart he made up his mind. Looking at her, she hasn't completely woken up yet. Even though she has broken free from her heart of riches and honor, she still hasn't broken free from the influence of the palace. This cautious attitude is the fear that the Sea Kingdom's royal court has accumulated for decades. Fine, I'll work hard again and teach her a lesson. I'll let her know that us cultivators are lawless and domineering. With this thought in mind, he said to the eunuch who came to report, "Please lead the way." When the eunuch saw Chen Ong stepping on the rubble of the jewels, he thought that this trip would be full of twists and turns. Just as he was thinking about how to deal with the King of Mermaids, he didn't expect Chen Ong to agree so easily. He happily bowed to Chen Ong and led the way. After walking for a short distance, they arrived at a palace that was 10 times bigger than Princess Lingsha's palace. Loud cheers could be heard coming from inside, and it sounded like a banquet. Princess Lingsha was furious. How was this a banquet for Chen Ong? It was obviously a banquet that the King of Mermaids had set up herself. When she heard that Chen Ong was a person, she summoned him. This kind of humiliation was equivalent to seeking death. How could Princess Lingsha tolerate it? She even threw her fear of the King of Mermaids to the back of her mind. She took the lead and asked, "What is the meaning of this?" The eunuch was timid and didn't dare to answer. However, the people inside seemed to have heard something. A voice that was obviously depleted by alcohol, and women came from the hall. "Are the 3 of us here? Come in and pour the wine for the guests." Lingsha was anxious and angry at the same time, but Chen Ong, who was usually calm, did not mind at all. He walked into the hall first, and there were more than 10 strange-looking people inside. Among them, there was a man with disheveled hair and a tattoo on his left lapel. He was playing with a red-scaled snake in front of a drunken old merman. There were others in Taoist robes, some with piercing rings, and some with tattoos on their faces. They would be considered demons in Middle-earth. But here, they were the King of Mermaids' guest. He took a quick glance and walked up to the stage. The others were also looking at him. When they saw that he was a young man of 16 or 17 years old, they looked down on him. The people here were all uncultured and ignorant. They probably hadn't even heard of Jinrenji Li before. Naturally, they didn't know how powerful the boy and the shorty were in the Shushan world. Someone laughed, still wet behind the ears. His voice wasn't soft. His words echoed in the hall, causing everyone to laugh. Chen Ong was clearly smiling, but there was nothing in his eyes. It was as if everyone here was just an interesting background, and he didn't care what they said at all. If Qi Jinchan heard what they said, he would kill everyone here. The King of Mermaids sat on the throne and spoke in a drunken manner. He first shouted, "3 ladies, didn't you always want to cultivate and learn Tao? Why aren't you pouring wine for the immortals? If there are immortals who are interested in your talent, Father's efforts will not be in vain." As soon as he finished speaking, someone slammed the table and stood up. He looked at Princess Lingsha lustfully and laughed. "Third princess, you are indeed talented. Scarlet Thunder Island has many spells. As long as you serve me respectfully, I will teach you many powerful spells. No one in the sea country will dare to provoke you." As soon as he finished, he spat out a flame from his mouth, causing the entire hall to cheer. Lingsha looked on coldly. Even she, who had cultivated for a few months, couldn't compete with such uncultured spells. She had accumulated some mana, but she learned from the orthodox mystic door. Her mana was thousands of times more powerful than the uncultured spells. With the Jiguanghan painting, she could easily kill someone like this. However, she still couldn't get rid of the influence of the imperial power that took away their lives. Chen Ong had to be a role model for her. At this moment, the Mermaid King looked at Chen Ong with a drunken look in her eyes. She laughed loudly and said, "You are the master of us 3 girls? I don't think you have any abilities. Do you have any powerful spells? Show me." He looked like he was treating Chinong like a clown. His eyes were half opened, as if he didn't care about Chinong at all. The three ladies of Purple Cloud Palace didn't dare to talk to Chinong like this. Even the two elders of Mount Song and Master Lianshan had to be respectful. Even though Chinong was just a reincarnated youth, they had to talk to him as an equal. Lingsha didn't know why her father was so reckless. Seeing him fawning over those uncultured demons that she didn't care about and shouting at her, she was touched. However, there was a layer of paper between them, and she couldn't scratch the itch. Chin-Ong nodded slightly and shouted, "Everyone, do you really want to see?" A bit of primary Qin, Shui-Jing, sword light appeared. Princess Lingsha shuddered as she watched. She couldn't forget how Chin-Ong had killed almost everyone in the East Sea Immortal Abode back at the Purple Cloud Palace. She couldn't forget how Chin-Ong had killed almost everyone in the East Sea Immortal Abode. However, the people around them only sneered and looked down on Chin-Ong. Their eyes were filled with disdain. The Mermaid King didn't even want to talk. He leaned on his throne and waved his sleeve impatiently. "You can try." Chin-Ong smiled and shook his head. He waited for Lingsha to beg in fear. "Master, please be merciful." Shui-Jing's sword light had already been unleashed. The sword light was as fast as lightning, and no one here could block it. Even if there were people who reacted in time and activated their protective spells, they would still be sliced into two pieces by the gentle sword light. Except for the unorthodox disciple of the Scarlet Thunder Island, whose sword light bypassed him. The others were all killed in a flash. The Mermaid King was dumbfounded. He couldn't even hold the wine cup in his hand steadily, and it slipped from his hand. He pointed at Chin-Ong and said with a trembling voice, "You! How dare you? How dare you?" Then he shouted, "Someone come here! Someone come!" Chin-Ong took a step forward and asked with his head tilted, "Is my sword sharp? Are my spells exquisite? Are my skills pleasing to the eye?" Seeing the Mermaid King scared out of his wits, he shook his head and laughed. He turned to ask Lingsha, "Have you learned anything?" Lingsha turned to look at the golden palace that was littered with corpses. Suddenly, she had an idea and broke through the barrier. She waved the cold frost painting in her hand and froze the uncultured cultivator of Scarlet Thunder Island, who said he wanted to take her in. The Mermaid King's eyes were no longer bright. Although he couldn't be as indifferent as Chin-Ong, he was at least treated as a normal person. The last shackles in his heart melted and he was no longer restrained. The master and disciple left on the golden ship. Prince Jiao Li came in from the back of the palace and saw the Mermaid King lying on the throne. His eyes were filled with disdain. The Mermaid King didn't know anything and said while trembling, "Your sister? She's crazy." Chapter 468. Chin-Ong brought Princess Lingsha out of the great Cheong Kingdom. Seeing that she was reluctant to leave, he smiled and asked, "You can't bear to leave this place?" Chin-Ong had given Princess Lingsha a few warnings previously, so he was already a very dignified person in Princess Lingsha's eyes. Fortunately, this was how the world was, so she didn't feel that there was anything wrong with it. The prestige of a master was like that of a father or a ruler. If he made any mistakes, it was not an exaggeration to punish him to death. Hearing Chen-Ang's question, she replied respectfully, "I don't have anyone that I miss. Even if I have a few good friends, fourth brother, and I will take care of them. It's just that my mount was fated with master. I can't bear to leave it here to be used by others." Chin-Ong then thought of the dragon whale. Their relationship as master and disciple stemmed from this. The karma between them was understandable. He said, "That's easy. You can follow me to the South Sea. The Eye of the Sea is huge. Not to mention one dragon whale, we can even raise a group of them. Let's delay for a while and go get it. We'll bring it along with us." Lingsha was still worried. The dragon whale was psychic and she loved it very much. Moreover, it was the reason why she became Master's disciple, so she had a higher opinion of it. The only thing she couldn't let go of was this beast. She was always worried that it would be mistreated by others. Hearing this, she was a little excited. She pointed to the northwest of the reef and said, "Our country's whale court is located there." Chunong saw that it was the place where the merchants were staying. He frowned and asked, "Why do you want the guests to stay there? Isn't that taking over the whale court?" Lingsha answered nervously, "The whale court has the deepest waters and the least number of submerged reefs. As long as the ships don't go too deep into the waterway, they won't run aground." Chunong nodded and said, "That's true. Follow me then." At this time, the shops on the reef gradually became prosperous. The people here did not have the time to build houses or lofts. Even if they had the time, they would not care about such things. The sea waves were huge. When the storm came, no matter how sturdy a building was, it would still be destroyed. Most of the sea merchants just hung their goods on the reef, letting the passing ships inspect them. Those who were interested could use a boat to cross. Because the waterway was very wide, there was no need to worry about people being stuck behind. The waterway to the whale court had to pass through this sea market. Chunong was interested in exploring it, so he slowed down the speed of the ship and slowly sailed past it. The sea market was a gathering of the merchants from all over the world. Due to the ocean currents, storms, and other reasons, the merchants from all over the world had their own coincidences. It was rare for them to arrive together in peace. Therefore, there was a place known as the Four Seas Link. It coincidentally happened to be the time of the year that was suitable for the passage of sea merchants from the four seas. This sea market would be established. There would be 1 or 2 markets in a year, and the amount of sea goods that it took in and sent out was extremely large. Moreover, there was no tax, so that day would be extremely lively. However, this was not the type of sea fair that the Merfolk Kingdom was holding this time. Instead, it was the Merfolk King spreading the news of his daughter's marriage and opening up the resources of the Sea Kingdom. The specialties of the Merfolk country were never lacking in sales. They were extremely rare in the 4 seas, so there were many merchants that came to form the sea market. Chunong did not care about the sea goods that were sold in the market. The treasures that he had broken in the Kaltra Pearl Palace could probably buy half of the market here. No matter how rich a mortal was, how could he be richer than an immortal? It was just that the karma of money was too heavy. Otherwise, Chunong would probably be able to support the entire great Ming dynasty by himself. Therefore, he only headed towards the place where information was exchanged on the sea. Information was the most important thing for merchants traveling the world. The sea market intersected the 4 seas and accommodated the 8 desolates. It was the place where information was the best. Of course, the sea merchants from all over the world would not miss it. Furthermore, countless sea countries relied on this place to gather information from all over the world. Therefore, there was actually a desolate reef in the sea market that had many tea houses set up. There were even some small boats that brushed past the reef. The people on the boats roared and communicated with others. Just as Chunong arrived, he heard a group of sea merchants dressed in great Ming Dynasty's attire discussing loudly. One of them said, "It's all thanks to Crane Collar Sword Hero Wong that the Northwest could form an alliance to protect themselves. Now that the 4 provinces in the Northwest are protecting each other and chasing the bandits out of the province, who knows how many of our fellow countrymen have been saved. Hero Wong is truly a Buddha to all. His merits are boundless." Another person at the side sneered and said, "That traitor Wang Ming colluded with the local authorities. What does he see the imperial court as?" He chased the bandits into the Hui tribe and said that he was driving wolves to devour tigers. What does he see the country's law as? It's all you people from the Northwest who worshipped him as the alliance master of the martial world. Do you think I don't know you? You're here to help him. I dare to say that the one who caused chaos in the great Ming dynasty is definitely Wang Ming. The person who spoke then looked back and sneered. I was wondering who it was. So it's you bunch of traitors. Alliance Master exposed the matter of your True Yang sword sect, colluding with the bandits and nurturing the bandits. He led my Northwest Alliance to exterminate your sect. I already expected that there would be some fish that slipped through the net. I didn't expect them to actually escape overseas. Alliance Master suppressed the bandits so that the imperial court could deal with the Tartars without worry. He contributed to the country. How could he be slandered by you traitors? Die! The two of them pulled out their weapons and were about to fight with their lives on the line. However, they were stopped by others who said, "You mustn't do this. If you attract the Mermaid Kingdom's guards, there will be trouble." Only then did they stop fighting. However, one of them scolded, "Traitor, you have the ambition of a wolf." The other shouted, "Colluding with the Tartars and reselling ironware and grain." One was a Shangshi aristocrat, and the other was a Shangshi merchant. Both of them hated each other and wished they could tear each other into pieces. It turned out that after Wang Ming returned to the northwest after practicing Taoism, even though he left his family was still a local tyrant with thousands of mu of fertile land. His friends were all local aristocrats, and he had countless connections. Relying on his great martial arts, he became the alliance master of the martial world in the northwest. He led the families of Shangshi to fight a few battles. Because of his magical power and supernatural powers, he actually won several battles and became famous. Because of his upright background, the imperial court entrusted him with the important task of training the people of the northwest to protect themselves. One moment of carelessness and he caused a huge ruckus. He actually contacted several provinces in the northwest to form an alliance to protect himself. Now he was the commander of a region and had a high position. His reputation in the martial world was even more prominent, and he had the potential to enter the martial world of the Central Plains. On the other side was the Shangshi merchant. It seemed that they were colluding with the northern bandits. The imperial court did not have any evidence, but Wang Ming led the martial artists to massacre them and took away a lot of their wealth. Both sides had a blood feud, and it was impossible for them to coexist. Even if they were thousands of miles away from the sea, they would still fight to the death. After arguing for a while, the man who had joined Truyong's sword sect from Jinshang suddenly sneered and said, "That traitor Wang Ming is just relying on some skills taught by a swordsman. Now, we have invited a real senior immortal from overseas. He is now the guest of honor of the Mermaid Kingdom. He is the second island master of the Black Wind Island, Black Demon Senran. He wields the Black Wind Trident. With this senior's help, he will definitely die a horrible death." Princess Lingsha asked Chen-Ong curiously, "Master, is this person in the main hall?" Chapter 469. When Chen-Ong heard this, he had a rough idea of what was going on. He thought to himself, "I left a thought with Wang Ming, but I didn't expect him to become so powerful. I modeled that thought's personality after the apocalypse. I'm already thick-skinned and black-hearted, but it's 10 times more vicious than me. I really can't underestimate it. As a righteous expert, it's not good for me to make things difficult for the Manchurian Qing. I wonder what will happen if I let it out to bear the consequences." Chen-Ong couldn't help but shed tears of sympathy for the Liaodong Tartars. He hoped that they would be able to get out of this predicament as soon as possible. After casually planting a strand of the demon in the body of the Jin merchant, Chen-Ong and Princess Lingsha turned to leave and went straight to the whale court. It was the most remote place in the northwest corner of the reef. The sea was wide and deep, and along the way there were soldiers from the Great Cheong Sea Nation guarding it, not allowing unauthorized people to enter. Of course, these soldiers recognized the third princess, so Chen-Ong wasn't stopped. When they arrived at the pavilion on the reef, Princess Lingsha saw that there were over 100 ships tied together with iron chains on the opposite side of the sea. There were many palaces and pavilions on the ships, and faint music could be heard from them. She couldn't help but frown. She immediately shouted, "Guards, bring my dragon whale here." The low-ranking official in charge of guarding the whale court ran over with sweat all over his forehead and said fearfully, "Greetings, third princess. Your Highness, the whale court is being used to receive important merchants and guests from overseas. The dragon whale is currently holding up the palace for the High Nation to receive guests, so it can't be moved. Even though Princess Ling Sha had a good temper, she couldn't help but be furious. Who allowed you to use my dragon whale to hold up the ships? I don't dare to disobey your Highness's orders, the low-ranking official said with a bitter expression. The guests in the palace are auctioning all sorts of rare treasures. Why don't we invite your Highness to take a look? After the auction is over, your dragon whale can be taken out for your Highness to travel. Ling Sha wanted to say something else, but she was stopped by Chinong. She nodded and agreed, and someone brought them over. Ling Sha chose a large ship with ease. The two of them sat down at the side of the ship before she introduced. Every year, our High Kingdom will sell some products, but it's never as grand as this year. Father is muddle-headed and wants to marry off my sisters. That's why there are so many seafarers coming. Just as she finished speaking, a dragon whale floated up with the palace and slowly came to the front of the ship. There were many different kinds of sea beasts and strange fish in the deep sea. There were even a few mermaids curled up at the side. Princess Ling Sha's expression turned ugly when she saw this. She whispered to Chinong, "Master, our mermaid sea kingdom has the ability to tame beasts and explore the sea. There are some rare sea beasts here, and because they have special abilities, we sell them to the sea merchants." She pointed at a strange beast that looked like a dragon camel and said, "For example, this sea camel is one of the sea beasts with the best endurance. It can dive several miles deep into the ocean to fish for treasures. After being tamed by our country, it's docile and obedient. It's an excellent choice for collecting deep-sea pearls. We mermaids can't use it, but it's very rare in other countries. They'll spend a lot of money to buy it." As expected, before she finished speaking, the sea beast was bought by a large ship beside her. The asking price here was also very special. There was a puffin-like bird standing on the railing at the bow of the ship. As long as the customer told the puffin the price, the other pair of puffins on the deck would imitate it to the customer. The transaction was done in secret and no outsiders would know. This was a hidden bid. There was another kind of open bid, and the host merman on the stage would explain it to everyone. They could also go up on the stage and show their treasures to everyone. Then they would let everyone bid. After the transaction was done, they only needed to give the mermaid officials 1/10 of the profit. Therefore, the stage was bustling with people. There was even someone who drove a boat full of black people. He cupped his fists and said, "There are 59 Kunlun slaves on this boat. They're all very strong and loyal. Everyone knows the reputation of our Cheongsang High Kingdom for training people." He scolded a Kunlun slave. The Kunlun slave meekly bent down and lifted up a cauldron that was half the height of a person. Looking at the muscles on his hands, he probably had the strength of 800 to 900 caddies. After this display, it was quickly bought for the high price of 500 cubic meters of fine jade and 43 bushels of pearls. The whole boat of Kunlun slaves was handed over on the spot. Only now did Chinong understand why they had to auction it on the ship even though there weren't many people. It turned out that some goods were sold on the ship. Without a larger sea area, they really couldn't fit them. As soon as this boat went down, another boat came up. It was actually a boat of Woot's patterned steel. It weighed tens of thousands of caddies and was bought by someone for 500 gold. Other than that, there were boats of pepper, tea leaves, several hundred caddies of ambergris, and even 50 crossbows and 600 sets of bows and arrows from the Great Ming Dynasty. They were all handed over. The scale of the transaction and the speed of the transaction were too much for one's eyes to take in. It truly deserved to be called the Four Seas Sea Market. When the dragon whale floated up again, this time there were many exotic flowers and herbs on top of the dragon whale. The dragon whale seemed to be excited as it slapped the water with its huge tail. It seemed to be jumping for joy as it deviated from the direction of the dragon whale and approached Chun Ang's boat. Ling Sha exclaimed, "It's my whale!" The merman official who brought them in quickly ran over and begged for mercy. "Princess, please calm the dragon whale down. I can't afford to ruin this sea market." Even though Ling Shao was angry, she wasn't unreasonable. She flew onto the dragon whale and controlled the water to slap its huge body. Finally, the dragon whale was calmed down. Only then did the people above let out a sigh of relief. Dozens of mermaids carried trays and displayed the spiritual herbs in the pavilion. Many seafarers came up from both sides and shouted noisily. Chun Ong heard someone asking, "Do you have 1,000-year blood coral grass?" Coincidentally, this spiritual herb was a specialty of the Purple Cloud Palace. It wasn't commonly seen in other places. Maybe only the Xiankong Island in the North Sea grew it. Otherwise, it would be like searching for a needle in a haystack. The sea was so vast that it was like searching for a needle in a haystack. Chun Ong looted the 9-story Pearl Palace, and there were many in his collection. He couldn't help but pay attention to them. He saw that it was a man in a Taoist robe. He was also an overseas itinerant immortal with Taoist power. Others could only vaguely see him. But Chun Ong could clearly see that he cultivated a type of prime, magnetic Dharma power, and it was quite extraordinary. Chapter 470. Chun Ong faintly smiled and shouted, "This item isn't worth anything. Since fellow Taoist has a use for it, I'll give it to fellow Taoist." With that said, he wrapped the spirit herb in his true qi and delivered it to the man. In the 4 seas, there weren't many people who could practice magnetism. Besides the individual immortals in the North and South Poles, there was only Tian Chi Esteemed's family on Copper Coconut Island in the South Sea. Therefore, this man's background wasn't a secret to Chun Ong. It was just a coincidence that he gave the herb to him. Chun Ong didn't plan to trick him. That man had a heavy responsibility and had to get the 1,000-year-old blood coral grass. He hesitated for a while, then accepted it shamelessly. He cupped his fist and said, "My master wishes to concoct an elixir, so he sent me here to gather the herbs to concoct the elixir. I really can't do without these herbs. Copper Coconut Islands, Lu Ha, hereby thanks you." Chun Ong also cupped his fist and said, "Jinling's Chisha Mountains loose cultivator Chun Ong greets fellow Taoist." Chun Ong knew about Lu He's background. He was the son of a Chaozhou seafarer with the surname Lu. He was sailing with his father when they encountered a hurricane, and the ship capsized. In desperation, his father tied him to a plank of the ship and let him drift with the current. Unexpectedly, a wave hit him on the back of a big whale. The whale carried him on its back and swam for thousands of miles. It kept its head above the sea and didn't sink into the water. When he swam near Copper Coconut Island, Tian Chi Esteemed saw him and saved him. At that time, Tian Chi Esteemed hadn't been cultivating for long and didn't have any disciples. He loved Lu He's talent, so he gave him coconut milk and panaceas. Although they were master and disciple, they were closer than father and son. Some time ago, Tian Chi Esteemed wanted to make a panacea for immortality. Lu Ha was the eldest disciple of Copper Coconut Island, so he left the island to find the panacea for his master. He and Chun Ong had a good conversation, so they returned to the boat. Lu Ha slowly told him the story. Originally, this medicine was not difficult to find. I heard that the Purple Cloud Palace, where the 3 phoenixes of the South Sea lived, had this kind of spirit herb. However, when I went to look for the medicine some time ago, I saw that the Purple Cloud Palace's sea eye was closed, and the island that welcomed guests was sealed. I had no choice but to find another way. Chun Ong was stunned for a moment. Then he laughed and said, "I wonder how many spirit herbs fellow Taoist is lacking? Please tell me all of them, and I'll see if I can be of more help." Lu He's face was full of joy as he said, "Other than this one, which is a little rare, the others are common spiritual herbs found in the sea. There's no need to trouble you." He took out a bag of mother sand from his sleeve and offered it. I had prepared a lot of gifts and befriended Chief Steward Dongxiu of the Purple Cloud Palace, asking her to gather some spiritual medicine for me. I didn't expect that a great enemy of the Purple Cloud Palace would come and suppress their palace, so there was no conclusion to this matter. This bag of metamagnet divine sand was originally prepared to exchange for spiritual medicine, so please don't reject it. Chen Ang's generosity made Lu Ha heave a sigh of relief. Cultivators were most afraid of debts of favors. It was easy to repay a high-interest debt, but difficult to repay a debt of favors. Previously, there was Senior Shin Gongbao, and recently there was Fairy Su Feinyang. Both of them were people who could make you pay with a little favor. Lu Ha was also a disciple of a prestigious sect, so how could he not know? However, this medicine was of great importance, so Lu Ha could not reject it, so he accepted it shamelessly. However, he had to be vigilant to avoid bringing disaster to his sect. Chen Ang's acceptance of the things made the two of them more comfortable with each other, and Lu Ha had a good impression of him. Chunong called Ling Shao over and smiled. I also obtained these spiritual medicines from the Purple Cloud Palace. Fellow Taoist, why don't you tell me what else you lack? I'll give it to you here to avoid trouble in the future. Lu Ha was surprised. Oh, Chun Daoyu was also allowed to collect so many spiritual medicines because he befriended their manager, Dong Xiao. This made Princess Ling Sha's heart tremble, and it also made Chinong think, I can't tell the truth about this. I can't say that I killed them with one sword strike, killed Dong Xiao, destroyed the passage of the divine sand, and forced the Ame sect to send people to show up. Then I made a deal with them and obtained 1/7 of the Purple Cloud Palace. He could only lie. That's not it. The truth is that I exchanged with the master of the Purple Cloud Palace. Lu Ha did not suspect anything, and the two of them had a pleasant conversation. The other spiritual medicines that Lu Ha needed were also provided by Chinong. When he heard that Chenong was going to the South Sea to set up his sect, Lu Ha volunteered to go with them and help Chinong set up his sect. The huge dragon whale was put into the 9-turn Yellow River Formation by Chinong and accompanied by Macho. Now that there was nothing else to worry about, the three of them boarded the golden ship of good fortune and headed towards the South Sea. Lu Ha learned the true teachings of the magnetism Dharma power of the Copper Coconut Island, and happened to be connected to the magnetism restriction in the golden ship of good fortune, so he could see some of its wonders. Sensing the ocean-like pressure in the core of this Dharma treasure that was driven by the magnetism, Lu Ha did not dare to underestimate it. He had only seen this kind of divine magnetism light on the magnetic peak of the Copper Coconut Island. Although the divine magnetism aura in the Copper Coconut Island was not a Dharma treasure, it was Tianqi's most powerful technique, and it was also what he relied on to cultivate his earth spirit Dharma power. The magnetic force in Chun Ang's golden ship was just a part of the force that grew from the divine magnetism thunderball. The difference was so huge that Lu Ha was confused. Could it be that this Chen Daoyu's Dharma power is stronger than Master's? This absurd thought flashed through his mind, and was almost instantly thrown to the back of the mind of this child who respected his teacher. The golden ship of good fortune used the magnetic force to escape, and its speed was even faster than Lu He's trident. There was another difference between the Copper Coconut Island and other people. Nowadays, all the cultivators in the world valued swords, but only the Copper Coconut Island favored flying tridents, which were better than ordinary flying swords. On the ship, Lu Ha often hit the water with the flying trident to practice the art of forking, which made Chinong feel strange, and he consulted him a few times. Only then did he know that the art of forking was very similar to swordsmanship, and it was only equivalent to a different kind of swordsmanship. The sea was vast, and the waves were vast and boundless. The golden ship of good fortune entered the South Sea from the East Sea, and it traveled for a month before they saw a faint black shadow floating in the stormy waves. At first, they thought it was an ordinary island, but when Lu Ha stood up in shock, they realized that they had arrived at the Copper Coconut Island. Many whale heads of different sizes appeared in the surrounding sea, and each of them had a piercing mouth. When they opened their mouths, Dozens of silver arrows were shot into the sky. Looking at the island, the coconut trees on the shore reached the sky, and the scenery was picturesque. On the shore, there were 20 to 30 bare-armed men and women in short clothes with open sleeves. Each of them was holding 3 to 5 coconuts, and they jumped into the sea like pellets, playing with the whales. Chapter 471. Lu Ha had joined the sect much earlier than his fellow disciples. Most of their spells were taught by him on behalf of their master, so he had a high prestige among them. Seeing him come back with his friends, they all greeted him warmly. Of course, some of them were dissatisfied. They pretended to be happy, but in fact, they were hiding evil intentions. Chien Ong sensed a malicious intent from a triangular-eyed man, which was directed at him and Lu Ha. That man smiled and asked with concern, "Big brother, did you have a smooth trip to find the herbs? I'm friends with Dong Xiao. If I didn't find the herbs, you can take my letter to her. She will definitely give me face." Lu has said indifferently, "Everything is fine. I didn't delay Master's important business. I heard that the Purple Cloud Palace has provoked a powerful enemy, and their gate was broken. Now they have sealed their cave, so I can't ask for the herbs. If it wasn't for Qin Daoyou's help, I don't know how many times I would have failed. I'm afraid I wouldn't be able to come back within 10 years. As he spoke, he introduced Chenong to everyone and bowed to them one by one. When Chan Ong returned the greeting, he felt the triangular-eyed man staring at his back with malicious intent. He couldn't help but sneer in his heart. This person is so narrow-minded. Just because I helped Lu Ha, he hates me. The rumor that Tian Qi only accepts disciples based on fate, not good or evil, is true. If it weren't for Tian Qi's strict sect rules, he would have been in trouble long ago. But looking at Lu He's behavior, it seems that he doesn't know his fellow disciples' true nature. The copper coconut trees on the island stood tall and straight, looking like umbrellas. Following the uneven topography of the shore, the coconut trees were lined up in rows, each of them 100 zhang tall, looking very neat. Even though Chunong had seen coconut trees before, these giant copper coconuts that were hundreds of meters tall and even steeper than skyscrapers were rare. The white sand under his feet was like a sprinkle. Chenong saw that everyone on Copper Coconut Island was barefooted and dressed in green. He couldn't help but feel mischievous. He also stretched out his feet to take off his shoes and socks. Strolling barefoot on the beach, he had a different kind of fun. Copper Coconut Island was very vast. Although it was called an island, it was actually not much smaller than Indonesia's territory on Earth. On the island, there was a mountain peak that reached the horizon. Chin Ong could feel the magnetic earth veins that branched off from the North Pole, circulating on the mountain peak. The magnetic pure aura was copious and powerful, and all metal objects on the island could not be preserved. As for the magnetic mana, only Lu Ha was able to successfully cultivate it. It could be seen that even on Copper Coconut Island, this mana was not something that anyone could cultivate. Chun Ong knew that this magnetic mountain was made by Tian Qi from the mud of the swamp. Just by looking at it, he knew that Tian Qi's earthly immortal fruit was not just for show. Not to mention that after he made this mountain, his mana had greatly improved and was much stronger than before. Lu Ha ordered people to pick the copper coconut tree to serve Chenong. This tree was as big as a dustpan. Its shell was also made of 1,000-year-old copper coconut tree ironwood. Ordinary flying swords couldn't cut it. Someone carried several of these huge trees. The triangular-eyed man took 2 and put them in front of Chenong. He didn't open the coconut tree shell. He wanted to see Chenong make a fool of himself. He himself blocked the way of others. It should be known that on the Copper Coconut Island, once released, anything refined from metal would be sucked in by the magnetic mountain. He was sure that Chenong didn't know about this and wanted to make him lose face. Among magic treasures, metal was the sharpest. If Chenong wanted to open the copper coconut tree shell, he would have to release his flying swords and magic treasures. At that time, not only would the magic treasures be sucked in by the magnetic mountain, but he would also lose face. If he could make Chin-Ong and Lu-Ha become enemies, it would be even better. Chin-Ong naturally knew what he was thinking, but he was speechless. Lu-Ha was not a dead man. It seemed like Copper Coconut Island was too isolated. The disciples couldn't even scheme against each other. These kinds of idiots were considered simple and honest among mortals. It was also because Lu-Ha-I let them be. Otherwise, even 10 of these idiots would have been tricked to death by him. As expected, when Lu-Ha saw it, a cold light flashed in his eyes. However, he didn't lose his temper in front of Chin-Ong because he wanted to protect his master's face. Instead, he personally picked up the Eastern Tai Divine Wood, a knife made from the 10,000-year-old copper coconut tree shell. He wanted to open the coconut tree shell for Chin-Ong. Our Copper Coconut Island has a North Pole true magnetic earth vein. Ordinary metal objects can't be released on the island. If fellow Taoist carries metal objects, you need to be careful. On the 1st and 15th of every month, when my master absorbs the true magnetic earth vein, you need to guard your mind and silently use your mana to suppress the magic treasure's abnormal movement. At this point, he suddenly remembered the golden ship that Chin-Ong used to bring him here. Suddenly, he smiled bitterly and said, "I forgot about fellow Taoist's golden ship. Such a huge magic treasure that weighs tens of thousands of kilograms. It's better not to go within 1,000 miles of the island. Fortunately, there are still 8 days until the 15th. At that time, I will personally send fellow Taoist off." Chin-Ong shook his head and smiled. "Brother Lu, there's no need to do it. I'll do it myself." As soon as he finished, the halo behind his head moved. The water view sword turned into a halo and flew out. With a flash, it cut open the copper coconut in front of him, revealing a clear pool of water inside. Under the contrast of the milky white coconut flesh, it was extremely moving and cute. It made Chin-Ang's mouth twitch. When Chin-Ong tasted it for the first time, it was indeed refreshing and tasty. It was extremely fresh and sweet, refreshing one's heart. His action made many people at the side look at him in a new light. They thought that the friends that their eldest senior brother made were not ordinary. It was rare to see such a sharp magic treasure that was not restrained by the magnetic force. Although the flying sword made from the Tai Divine would had extraordinary power, it lacked this kind of sharpness. It couldn't be considered superior. To restrain the copper coconut shell, it was not as neat as Chin-Ong. Lu-Ha smiled bitterly. "I've embarrassed myself in front of you." He was extremely ashamed. He was also a little angry at this junior brother who had tolerated him in every way. The triangular-eyed man was called Puda. He had a miserable life since he was a child. Lu-Ha didn't care about him because of the relationship between him and his master. Today, when he saw that Puda had humiliated his master, he decided to punish him. Copper Coconut Island had strict rules, so he could only do this. After they left, Lu-Ha took Chin-Ong to a guest room to rest. Ling Sha waited on the side. After Lu-Ha left, she complained to Chin-Ong, "That person is so rude." "Teacher, I see that the atmosphere in Copper Coconut Island is quite simple. Why is there such a person here? His mana is mixed. Tomorrow I'll ask him for guidance and make him pay back his face." Chin-Ong waved his hand and smiled. "There's no need to do this. Tian-Chi is very strict in the sect. How can he let his disciple embarrass him? Also, Tian-Chi is very protective. If you take revenge, it will make him want to rebel. It's better to let him deal with it himself. If there's anything wrong, I'll make it up to him." Chin-Ong gave her some homework and then let her go. He shrunk the golden ship of good fortune to the size of a finger. He secretly resonated with the magnetic force of the magnetic mountain and started to understand the mysteries of the magnetic force. Any treasure made of 5 metals would not be able to survive the magnetic force of the North and South Yin and Yang magnetic force. Among the immortals, there were only 3 to 5 things that were not afraid of being absorbed. However, Chin-Ang's golden ship of fate was not among them because of its heavy metal quality. Chen Ong had to complete the primary magnetic prohibition so that the golden ship of fate would not be afraid of being restrained and would become even more powerful. Chapter 472. Early the next morning, Lu Ha suddenly paid a visit alone. Chun Ong could tell that he wanted to apologize for what happened earlier, so he invited him in. Sure enough, Lu Ha used his transcendence energy to gather 10 copper coconut sprouts and gave them to Chen Ong, saying, "Earlier, it was my fault for not disciplining them properly and neglecting fellow Taoist. Previously, when I received fellow Taoists' help, I was already uneasy. Yesterday, I even offended you. I'm truly ashamed. Please forgive me." He was about to kowtow when Chen Ong hurriedly said, I don't dare to offend you. Lu has said, I planted these 10 copper coconut sprouts a long time ago. They're only 100 years old and can't be of much use. Originally, they were more than that, but the island's copper coconut plants were loved by my teacher, so I didn't dare to monopolize them. These 10 copper coconut sprouts are my apology, gift to you. I hope you won't blame me. When Chen Ong heard this, he knew that the way he looked at Tong Yi yesterday, as well as his fondness for the coconut juice, were all seen by him. Seeing how humble and peaceful he was, Chen Ong knew that he was a person worth befriending, so he naturally wouldn't blame him. He smiled and said, Fellow Taoist, I will accept your kindness, but I don't dare to agree with your apology. I'm friends with you. It has nothing to do with others. Of course, Chen Ong had to say that. If he accepted Lu He's apology, wouldn't he have to talk about seniority with the people of Copper Coconut Island? Tian Chi wasn't good enough to be Chen Ang's martial uncle, so it was better to be friends with each other. Then he heard Lu has said, Yesterday Shifu and I reported fellow Taoist Chen's arrival. When Shifu heard it, he was very concerned about fellow Taoist Chen's arrival. I wonder if fellow Taoist Chen would be willing to meet him? Chen Ong did not refuse, so he arranged a banquet for the evening and invited Chen Ong and the others. Chen Ong thought about it and knew that he couldn't be below Tian Chi, so he wanted to show some of his abilities so that Tian Chi wouldn't dare mess up their seniority. Otherwise, if Tian Chi kept calling him his martial nephew, wouldn't Chen Ong be at a disadvantage? He thought to himself, my celestial river magic power has already gathered 2 types of true water. I'm afraid that he won't be able to see through the profoundness within and take advantage of me. It's better to reveal some things again. He was also curious about the magnetic mana that Lu Ha cultivated. In the world of Shushan, the 2 poles of true magnetism were separated by 10,936,365 miles. The energy was chaotic, and neither immortals nor mortals could have it. Moreover, it was connected to the heavenly pillar and the earthly dimension, and was supported by the universe. Its mysteriousness was definitely not below that of the vast Milky Way. Although he didn't have sect Master Chen's arts, he couldn't enter the most profound 3 pure deity arts of this world, the true teachings of the Gautama Buddha. However, it was not inferior to the innate 5 elemental Dharma power and the Tai Yin and Taiyang heavens. In Chen Ang's opinion, it was very promising. Unfortunately, Tian Chi had his own inheritances, and studying the magnetic energies was very complicated. Chen Ong wanted to use Tian Chi's experience to help him understand the magnetic energies, but he couldn't create a new foundation. Chen Ong wanted to use Tian Chi's experience to help him understand the magnetic energies. However, the prerequisite was that Chen Ang's understanding of the magnetic energies was not below Tian Chi's. Only then could he exchange his experiences. Originally, it would have been best to create a magical treasure with magnetic energies, like the 2 poles of the universe disk. I could use it to verify what I've learned and put it into practice. Unfortunately, I've used up all the divine magnetic iron tools, and the other materials are rare. I have to go to the 2 poles of the universe divine magnetic mountain to find them. I can only use the origin magnetic aura chi here to practice one of the magical powers of this world. What Chen Ong wanted to practice was one of the 2 most widely practiced magical powers in Shushan. Those bald donkeys were the best at this. Which of them didn't have a Buddha's light magical power? In the Xianmen, it was known as the divine light. It was considered a common spiritual art in the Xianmen. Loose immortals knew a few of them, but when they reached the level of the six freaks of the universe, or even the celestial immortals, they would have endless power. For example, the Tai-Yin divine light of destruction, the great five elemental divine light of destruction, the ice soul divine light, the red corpse seven evils divine light, the innate separation divine light, the sandalwood Buddha light, the being and formless protection divine light, the Tai-Yin netherworld divine light, the great thunder divine light, and the blood shadow divine light, which was the reason why the Blood God Sutra was so powerful. It was the best magical power in Shu Mountain. In Shu Mountain, the magical power could be divided into 6 categories: thunder, water, fire, light, sound, and qi. Most of the magical power didn't belong to the 6 categories, and most of them were secret techniques. Now, Chen Ang's water magical power was one of the strongest in the world. He was also very proficient in fire and thunder magical power. As for the remaining 3 magical powers, he was just a beginner and wasn't very good at them. And what Chen Ang wanted to practice now was the easiest magical power of the divine light. It was called the metamagnet divine light. It was probably because the force of metamagnet was shapeless and incorporeal, and its nature was close to the light magical power. That was why it was suitable to be cultivated in the divine light and had the power of absorption. It was more convenient than the other true meanings of tranquility, the penetrating chill, and the evil will of the blood god. At this moment, Chen Ang was using his primordial spirit to absorb the North Pole true magnetic force under the thousands of feet of the earth vein. He derived 2 magical powers of the metamagnet divine light. Both were extremely powerful, and even the sky immortals couldn't handle them. He wasn't afraid that Tian Qi would look down on them. However, it was difficult to choose between the meridian magnetic light and the yin-yang magnetic light. After thinking about it, he realized that although the meridian magnetic light could be used with the 12 seasons waterscape sword to add another layer of magical power, he only had half a day's time after all. He didn't have the time to refine the meridian magnetic light in such a short time. Only the yin-yang magnetic light was specialized in one kind, and he had the special magical power of yin and yang to supplement it. In addition, the North Pole magnetic light was close to the yin attribute, and Chen Ang had the help of the Tai-Yin true water. So he could practice it in half a day, and it was quite powerful. Then he used the Milky Way Dharma power to swallow the pure magnetic aura and refine it into a thin layer of magical light. Then he used the Tai-Yin true water to refine it into a wisp of extremely yin and extremely soft metamagnet divine light that contained the power of swallowing. He kept it in his left eye. Like this, he kept it in an endless stream. After a few hours, he refined a wisp of magical light that was as thick as a thumb. It was the Tai-Yin metamagnet divine light, and its power was not to be underestimated. Time passed quickly. Not long after, Lu Han knocked on the restriction of the place where Chen Ang was cultivating in seclusion and invited him to attend the banquet. Tian Qi's cave abode was under the metamagnet divine mountain. The place where he received his guests was a round stone room that was 100 feet wide. From the top to the ground, it was more than 200 feet high and about 10 acres wide. The 4 walls were as smooth as jade, and there were dozens of doors on the walls. There were 8 jade brushes that were as thick as teacups and about 10 feet long hanging from the ceiling. The tips of the brushes were burning with an olive-shaped silver light, which brightened the whole room. This cave abode was not bad, and it was not bad for that person to come. However, the 9 Bends Yellow River Formation in Chen Ang's sleeve was still holding the Purple Cloud Palace's 9-story Pearl Jade Palace. How could he be moved? Seeing him talking and laughing as usual, Lu has secretly admired his profound ability to maintain his composure. When the 2 of them entered the cave abode, they saw a thin old man with a long beard sitting cross-legged on the main seat. He didn't look like a monk or a Taoist. It was Tianqi. His eyes were half closed, but when Chenong came in, he suddenly opened them and looked carefully. When he saw Chenong clearly, he waved his right sleeve and took the jade stool to his side, sitting on the main seat with Chenong. Chapter 473. No matter how strong you were, you couldn't cover up your traces. Tianqi thought that Chenong was just a young man, and because he had offended Chenong first, Tianqi thought that Chenong was just a young man. He was proud, and he cared about his reputation the most. He wanted to punish Chenong in front of Chenong, and he wanted to show that he was an elder of Chun'ang's sect. Unexpectedly, as soon as he saw Chenong, the Tai magnetic pure qi in Chun'ang's body reacted, and he understood some details about Chenong. The magnetic supernatural power was divided into yin and yang. The North Pole magnetic pure baleful qi was yin, and the South Pole magnetic true dipper was yang. The magnetic essence energy under Copper Coconut Island was a branch of the North Pole magnetic true dipper. Therefore, it was also of the pure yin attribute and was called the extreme yin magnetic force. Chun'ang had combined the North Pole pure qi and the Tai pure water, so his Tai magnetic force was even purer than Tianqi's. Therefore, as soon as they met, they sensed the Tai magnetic force in their bodies repulsed each other, so they knew a little bit about each other. Even though his Tai magnetic force is a little weak, it's purer than mine, and his magic power is not weaker than mine. He and Lu He are in the same generation. But how can I call myself an elder of Chenong? If news of this were to spread, wouldn't I be laughed at by my fellow cultivators from overseas? Thinking of this, Taoist Tianqi moved Chenong to his side. Tianqi's metamagnet godly light was called the Tai metamagnet godly light. Even though it was the same as Chun'ang's Tai metamagnet godly light, it didn't have the properties of yin and yang. Since it couldn't coexist with the magnetic field of the South Pole sun, it couldn't cultivate the great supernatural power of the yin-yang divine light of magnetism. Therefore, it didn't deserve the name Extreme Yin. His Extreme Yin Divine Thunder, on the other hand, could be said to live up to its name because it could gather and disperse at will, seeking its own yang attribute. He was aware of this as well. This was related to the purification of his magnetic, magical power. He had gone into seclusion several times in an attempt to purify his magical power, but to no avail. Seeing Chenong sit down next to him, he asked, "Where is Puda?" Lu He, who was sitting next to him, answered, "11th Martial Brother is waiting outside." Tianqi Shangren sneered, "You have followed me for many years. Have you ever seen anyone make me lose face like this?" He heard everyone in the hall say in fear, "No." Puda Martial Brother was confused for a moment. Tianqi, the exalted being, said coldly, "Bastard. He's jealous of Senior Brother, neglecting our esteemed guest and insulting our Copper Coconut Island's reputation. How can we let him off lightly? Puda has always been narrow-minded and can't stand it. It's fine if you guys give in to him. Now, you actually dare to betray your fellow disciples. Won't you all kill each other in the future? Even if I die 100 times, it won't be enough." Puda, who was kneeling on the ground, trembled. He fell to the ground and begged, "Master, please spare my life." Tianqi, the exalted being, looked at him coldly, then glanced at Chun'ang. Chenong smiled. He knew what he meant. Tianqi, the exalted being, didn't want to do this. After all, Puda had only made a small mistake. He just wanted to teach him a lesson. In the future, if he didn't change his mind, Tianqi, the exalted being, would be even more ruthless. However, Chun'ang's position was very high. He was no lower than Tianqi, the exalted being, so Puda had offended Chenong even more. After all, there was a big difference between offending someone of the same generation and offending someone of the same generation. Chun'ang hiding his real power made Tianqi, the exalted being, even more rebellious. He felt that he had lost face because of Chenong, so he had done this to show Chenong. If Chenong knew what was good for him, he would give in to him and help him regain his lost face. That would be great. If Chenong didn't give in, they would become enemies. It was easy to solve this matter. Chun-Ong would ask him for a favor and take responsibility for some of his own mistakes. He would ask him to push the boat along the current and let the matter pass. After that, he would be punished a little and would naturally be happy and harmonious. But why would Chun-Ong give in to him? Most cultivators were like nice people. They didn't want to lose face because of trivial things. Therefore, even if they lost face, they had to take care of Tianqi's feelings. But for cultivators like Chun-Ong, was Tianqi's friendship worth losing face? Didn't Nuwa destroy the Shang dynasty? She became a god and destroyed the world? Chun-Ong laughed and said, "Tianqi, my friend, you're too—" He didn't finish his sentence. He lowered his head and started drinking tea. Tianqi didn't know what to say. Chun-Ong didn't know what was good for him and had even seen through him. Tianqi couldn't keep his face. He shouted, "Take this bastard away and whip him 500 times." Puda was dragged away and whipped loudly outside the hall. Chun-Ong had humiliated Tianqi, but he couldn't do anything about it. When he talked to Chun-Ong again, his words became more aggressive. Lu Ha was in an awkward situation. Tianqi wanted to find a chance to attack him, but Chun-Ong always stopped him. After such a long time, his heart was filled with anger, so he decided to just ignore it and forcefully said, "In the 4 seas, I'm the only one who cultivates in magnetism magic power. The other cultivators with magnetism magic power either live in seclusion at the 2 poles or establish their own mansions on the axis of the earth, so it's not convenient for me to ask for guidance. Now, Chun Daoyu, a handsome cultivator from the Central Plains, also cultivates the magnetic element. I'd like to ask you to help me." Without waiting for Chun-Ong to refuse, he released the cave residence's restriction and released the magnetic mountain's suction force. Tianqi flew away and landed on the top of the mountain. This mountain was connected to the Copper Coconut Island's Earth core magnetic field, which was created by Tianqi himself. It turned out that this place was a huge swamp, a place where tens of thousands of years of filth had accumulated. The mud in the swamp belonged to the Yin magnetic field, and it moved along with the magnetic force. It contained a little bit of power, which was attracted by the North Pole magnetic field. It was extremely heavy, and anyone who was caught by it would find it hard to escape. If it was an ordinary cultivator, they would at most refine a sinister treasure and scatter it into a swamp, pester people, collect the treasure, and trap their enemies. However, Tianqi had created a mountain that was as tall as the clouds. It contained the essence of the North Pole, true, magnetic field. It could absorb gold and iron. It was very convenient to absorb people and things. It was Tianqi's home ground. He didn't have good intentions in choosing this place. He wanted to humiliate Chun-Ong. Chun-Ong seemed like he couldn't refuse. So he took out the 12 Yuanshan waterscape swords. Rings of light flashed, and 12 moon-like sword lights surrounded the mountain. They were even more powerful than the 49 divine with swords that Tianqi had taken out.